All righty. Should be much better now, much clearer now. Just had to do a technical thing. So now we're here. So glad that you all are here. Let's start our late night chat.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
People, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Wow. So great to be here with all of you tonight. We're going to have yet another one of our great late night conversations. Yes, it's been a little choppy. Hopefully that is resolved now. I just had to take care of a technical thing. So hopefully it's clear from here on out. We shall see. But I'm glad that you're all here with me tonight. A lot is going on in the world. A lot is happening. And so I am going to have to obviously respond to everything that's been happening in the world. I also want to show you some of what we're trying to do with the Center for Political Innovation. And that'll all be in tonight's chat. But the way we generally do things on this channel is I give my opening remarks. My opening remarks are then followed by a roll call. And then from there, after I've done the roll call and I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. From there, I answer your super chat questions for the rest of the night. That's the way we tend to do things on this channel. So if there's something that you would like me to talk about in the second half of our program, the best thing to do is to send me a super chat on YouTube or Rumble Rant on the Rumble. Now I see we have one Rumble Rant already from John McPeace, and he wrote about the Uhuru 3, and we will certainly talk about that. Very, very important. Now is crunch time on that case. But yeah, if there's anything you want me to talk about in the second half of the show, send me a super chat or a Rumble Rant. That's the way we do things here. If you're on Facebook and there's something you want me to talk about, you need to go to the YouTube stream or go to the Rumble stream. Find me on there and send your question that way. Now, we do have a few announcements. First of all, we are going to resume the morning messages. We took a little pause on the morning messages, but we will be resuming morning messages shortly. So tune in tomorrow morning. Go to the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel to take a look at the morning message. Every morning we have a morning message from a different CPI member who puts forward a message, a greeting that is able to give people inspiration. So we do that every morning on the CPI YouTube channel. And so we have that. So go and subscribe for the morning messages. That's how our community is there for each other, there to support each other, etc. So that's the first announcement. And also, if you feel so inspired, we now have a mechanism for you to make a morning message. You can make a morning message of your own. And that's a way that you can stay plugged in with the community as well. If you feel inspired by what we do here and you'd like to contribute, you can submit a morning message of your own. And so that's another way that you can be inspired and you can help out. And we are trying to help people be there for each other in our communities. That's another way that you can be involved. Now, I do want to mention a very, very important workshop that's coming up next weekend. It'll be on Saturday, October 12th in the Chicago area, all day, starting at 9 in the morning until evening time. We are having a workshop, and it's going to be a great workshop. It really, really will be a tremendous workshop that we are having on October 12th, themed around working families first, build the economy, not the empire. And it's going to be great. And so I really hope that you will be there. You can register here for the workshop. You need to register in order to come. The location is not public. Security is always a concern. So if you want to attend, you need to register to attend. And there'll be good food. It's going to be catered with good food. There'll be music, speeches, informal classes with discussion. Peter Coffin is going to be there. I'm going to be there. It's going to be a great event for everyone. So please register, and so we can give you the information for the event. And we hope to have a great workshop next weekend, October 12th, in the Chicago area. So if you're in the Midwest, you can do it. There is going to be lodging available the night before and the night after. If you're driving from a long way, we got people coming in from Minnesota, coming in from New York, coming in from Missouri, coming in from different places. So if you're going to be driving from a distance and you need a place to sleep that night, before or after, just let us know. We'd love to have you there. I'd love to meet you. I get on here a lot. Almost every night I get on here. And I'd love to meet you, and I'd love you to know more about our community, because our community is a lot more than just me, and we do a lot of important work, which I will be talking about on these streams. So please register for the workshop. It's going to be great. So that's that. So now I can get into my opening remarks. The way these streams work is I give my opening remarks. Then from there, we do a roll call. And then from there, I answer your questions for the rest of the night. So send a super chat or a Rumble rant for something for me to talk about in the second half of our program. So we all know what's happening in the world right now. Israel is invading Lebanon. Iran is striking Israel in retaliation for them invading Lebanon. This is not good. This is not a good situation. And, Israel has been on a killing spree since October 7th, taking innocent lives. Meanwhile, the Palestinians have been resisting. And this is a very hard time for all of us. We want peace in the world. And we know that the main barrier to peace is an economic system, imperialism, capitalism in its monopolistic stage. We know that the reason we aren't seeing peace in the world is because there is a new economy rising in the world today, and that a number of countries have broken free from the dominance of Western capitalism and imperialism. A number of countries have ripped out of this open international system. The World Economic Forum, the big banks and corporations, what they call globalism, what many Trumpers call globalism, is actually capitalism in its monopolistic stage. It's imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. And it is keeping the world poor, and it is holding back economic development around the world. It is grinding countries into poverty and securing the profits and the monopolies of an international banking elite, the Wall Street monopolists, the London Stock Exchange. The world is dominated by international financiers, an international financial oligarchy that dominates the world and wants to prevent development so they can stay at the top of it. And in the 20th century, many countries broke out of that system. And all across the world today, there are countries asserting their independence, taking control of their resources and their economy, and building and constructing. Meanwhile, the Western elite, the British banker class elite, the Anglo-American establishment, they are in a frenzy of degrowth. They want to reduce the population. They want to reduce consumption. They want to drive down living standards, and in order to do it, they are setting up a low-wage police state in order to save their system, because they no longer have room for us at the assembly line. They are trying desperately to destroy the productive forces, reduce consumption, grind the world into poverty. The same thing that they've done to so many countries all over the world, to Africa, to Asia, to Latin America, they're now doing to Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, and Michigan, and Alabama and Georgia. They want to grind us into absolute poverty. They tell us we'll own nothing and we'll be happy about it. They tell us that we'll live in a pod and we'll eat bugs. And this is all necessary to save their system. But we say, no. We say there is no limit to human growth and creativity. We say that human beings are an amazing species endowed with godlike creative power. And we've gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to space travel and iPhones. We have the ability to reinvent our environment, reinvent our relationship with nature, to force the environment to serve us, and to move toward a higher plane. Because we have the ability to move toward a higher plane and reinvent our relationship with nature and move toward higher levels of abundance, we human beings are constantly reinventing our social system. And under hunter-gatherer civilization, we had tribal existence, a tribal social order. We moved from that to the slave empires of Egypt and Mesopotamia, Greece and Rome. We moved from there to feudalism with serfs and landowners, and we moved from there to capitalism. And then capitalism moved into its monopolistic stage of imperialism, and we argue that human beings can move to an even higher stage in which abundance is unleashed and human creative power is unleashed by overcoming the irrationality of a system where people are homeless because there are too many houses, where people are hungry because there is too much food, right? And that the irrationality of the profit-centered system is holding back human creativity, and that what we need is a government of action to fight for working families, a government that will control the economy and organize the economy in order to ensure that poverty can be eradicated and that human creativity can be unleashed to the highest levels possible. We have a 4-point economic plan to break our country out of the international financial system of imperialism and move toward a rationally planned economy so that human growth can soar to new levels. Number one, we call for a mass mobilization to rebuild the country, hire the unemployed, put them to work building new highways and new bridges, put them to work building high-speed railway, put them to work building new universities and hospitals and schools, and rebuild this country on new foundations. Give this country a high-tech makeover, a mass mobilization to rebuild America, like Roosevelt did with the Works Progress administration, but amped up on steroids. Build, build, build. It is time to mobilize to rebuild this country. That would be step number one. And step number two, in order to pay for it, would be public control of our natural resources, the banks and the factories and the industries. The centers of economic power, the natural gas, the oil, the coal, and the timber. The natural wealth of this country should be public property, so that the burden of taxation is taken off of the population, so that instead of having to pay a huge amount of our wages and taxes, our country gets wealthier from our oil and from our natural gas and from our coal and from our timber. Natural resources should be public property, and the wealth from our natural resources should go into the public budget to finance the economic rebirth of the country. Public control of our natural resources and our natural wealth. The wealth of America, America's oil and coal and timber and natural wealth, should be public property. Step number three would be the creation of a national bank and the control of lending by the community. Community banks, state banks, and a national bank that would assign credit in order to stabilize the economy and ensure economic growth. Lending money in accordance with an overall economic plan, lending money to people to start their own businesses, lending money so that working families can buy their own home and not have to live as renters for the rest of their lives, lending money so that new farms can open up, lending money so that new ideas can be financed, new tech innovations can be created. The lending of money should be done strategically in the overall interest of the country. And then the final step would be the enactment of an economic bill of rights, the right to housing, the right to healthcare, the right to education, and not as a handout, but rather as an investment. If we're going to have a strong country, we need the labor power of every single person to be utilized. We need every single person to be working and contributing to building a strong country. We need people, if they're not hired by the private sector, they ought to be hired to build the new roads and hired to build the new bridges. We need to utilize the labor power of all people. So full employment. And in addition to that, if we're going to have a strong country with a productive labor force, we need people to be healthy. And we need a national healthcare system and the right to healthcare based on prevention. And a whole apparatus that encourages and enables people to be healthier and stronger for the good of the country. We need access to healthcare. In addition to that, we need education. And again, not as a handout, but because we need more engineers in this country. We need more scientists in this country. We need a well-educated population so that we can rebuild our country and rebuild our economy. So we should invest in everyone. We should invest in our people. That is the idea. Full employment, healthcare for all, education for all as an investment in the real source of wealth, because it is human labor and human creative power that is the source of wealth. And we should try to maximize that. And that is the 4-point plan of the Center for Political Innovation, our 4-point plan to rebuild the country. You can read about it on our website, cpiusa.org. We are the Center for Political Innovation, and we have a plan to rescue this country and oppose imperialism, the capitalist, monopolistic, global system of imperialism must be opposed. And instead, we want to rebuild the country. That is what we advocate, and that is what we aim to do. We want to build a whole new America for working families. And we want to build a new economy that would be friendly toward Iran, friendly toward Venezuela, friendly toward Cuba and Russia and China and Gabon and Niger and all the countries in the world that are currently opposed by the international financial oligarchy because they will not accept their degrowth and will not accept their impoverishment. We want to build them up. We want to trade with them. We want a growth-based economy, not a degrowth economy. We don't want austerity and impoverishment. We don't want depopulation. We want more children to be born. We want more people starting healthy, happy families. We want more people to have jobs and access to housing. We want more investment, more highways, more bridges, more steel, more manufacturing, more industry. Right? We are all about growth and expansion and human creativity, and there is no limit to growth. There is absolutely no limit to growth. And we ultimately want to create a society with so much wealth and so much abundance that the very need for a government can fade away, that people can just do what they feel like doing, from each according to their own ability, to each according to their needs. But the road to do that is rational planning of the economy. Getting rid of the system where the chaos of the market and the greed of the big monopolies defines production. We want a rationally organized economy so that growth is unlimited. We believe in growth, we believe in expansion, and we believe in defeating the imperialist monopolies that dominate the United States of America. And to some extent, this is what I've always believed. When I was a kid, I was told that socialism never worked anywhere. All the countries that ever had a socialist or communist government just completely failed. And I learned at a young age that that was a lie. I learned what was achieved in the Soviet Union, how Stalin mobilized the population with 5-year economic plans to electrify the whole country, to wipe out illiteracy, to build the world's largest power plant, the Dnieper Dam, to build the world's largest steel industry, to eventually invent space travel, to invent the AK-47 rifle, to have the world's largest and the first cell phone ever invented by Leonid Kaprianovich in the Soviet Union. I mean, many economic achievements have happened around the world with socialist planned economies. Libya, under the leadership of Gaddafi, it built the great man-made river, the world's largest irrigation system. It had the highest life expectancy on the African continent. If you look at what's been achieved by China, 800 million people lifted out of poverty, electrifying the whole country, eliminating extreme poverty, building the world's biggest telecommunications manufacturing, the world's biggest steel industry. Socialism is about building. I've seen what socialism has done in Nicaragua. That country, a very impoverished country in Central America, they have electrified every region of it. Even the most remote mountainous areas of Nicaragua are electrified thanks to what socialism in the country has achieved. Vietnam has had massive achievements. I've met with the Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Union of Vietnam and seen what they have achieved with their planned economy. And socialism has changed quite a bit. In 21st century socialist and anti-imperialist societies, there is a big market sector. In Vietnam, they call their system the socialist-oriented market economy. In China, they call their system socialism with Chinese characteristics. And in Nicaragua and in Venezuela, they have micro-entrepreneurship programs where they fund people to start their own businesses, to start their own, people design shoes and they're given subsidies by the Nicaraguan government to start their own shoe designing company, to start their own, their own clothing line of clothing, to start their own farm. And, and cooperative enterprises where workers share the profits are part of this vision. And a main aspect of 21st century socialism is using the market to benefit an overall planned economy. I think markets are a part of 21st century socialism. The state needs to control the major centers of economic power, like banking, like energy, like natural resources and infrastructure, but it needs to overall promote and expand economic growth by subsidizing and guiding a market sector. Right? This is what they call socialism of the 21st century. And it's not always done in a Marxist way, right? If you look at, for example, what they're doing in Venezuela and in Nicaragua, they call their socialism, they call it Bolivarianism, after Simón Bolívar, the anti-colonial hero of South America. It's very much rooted in Roman Catholicism and Roman Catholic Christianity, as well as the religious practices of native and indigenous peoples. In Nicaragua, there's whole regions that have been under the control of autonomous indigenous groups, and that it's about finding a model of socialism that works in a particular country. In addition to that, in Iran, I've been to Iran and I've seen the great achievements of the Islamic Revolution. Now, in Iran, they don't call it socialism at all. They say it's not capitalism, but Islam. And they have an economy where the state controls the oil and the natural resources, where they have community assemblies called Basij councils that carry out the goal of the revolution on a community level. And they organize the economy in order to see expansion and growth with the state that comes out of an anti-colonial revolution guiding the economy. That is the idea. And that what we need in the United States is a government of action that fights for working families, a government that is drawing its power from a well-organized and well-mobilized population and controlling the economy so that growth is unlimited. The big divide in the world today is between the pro-growth economy taking place in the BRICS countries, the pro-growth economy of Russia, the pro-growth economy of China, the pro-growth economy of India, the pro-growth economy of Iran, the pro-growth economy of so many African nations that want to raise their people up out of poverty, the pro-growth economy of the Bolivarian countries, the pro-growth economy of the axis of resistance in the Middle East, the pro-growth economy that is in many different parts of the planet. and the international financial dictatorship of London and Wall Street bankers who are promoting degrowth in order to stay at the top of the world. And we in America, our whole country was started because the founding fathers believed in economic growth. The British Empire wanted America to be a captive market, a trading hub in their global sea-based empire, and we rejected that. We believed in economic growth in the United States, and the American Revolution was fought because the settlers who came to the United States wanted to build and construct. And since 1776, wave after wave after wave of immigrants have come to this country because they wanted more. They wanted a better life. They wanted to build. They wanted to construct. And, black people were brought here as slaves and endured horrendous persecution, but yet they survived genocidal conditions and fought to get their children a better life. Generation after generation has come here and fought in this country and stood up to harsh conditions and climbed over fences and stood up for itself and demanded better, because this country, America, is a pro-growth country. It is a country that believes that tomorrow can be better than today. It is a country founded on optimism and the belief that we can have a better life. And now the satanic cabal of international bankers, the London Stock Exchange, the Wall Street money class is saying, nope, you all got to be poor. You all have to be poor. Our system, in order for us to stay at the top, growth has to stop. And we, the American people, are coming together to say, no, we will not accept degrowth. We will not accept a low-wage police state. We will not be locked down and marched into World War III. We believe in growth. We believe in optimism. We want to see a better tomorrow and a better future. And that spirit, that American spirit of growth and optimism and construction, that is the spirit upon which the Center for Political Innovation has been organized. Right? We believe in growth. We are a pro-growth movement. We are pro-growth. We believe in growth. And in order to believe in growth, we must be anti-imperialists, because imperialism is degrowth. That is what imperialism is. Imperialism degrew Iraq. Iraq used to be a country that was selling oil on the international markets in competition with Wall Street. The Ba'athist Arab socialist government of Saddam Hussein, had broken that country out of Western domination, had used the oil resources to build up an economy. And then what happened? Then the USA invaded and destroyed Iraq, and Iraq has been degrown by the imperialists. And furthermore, what did the imperialists do to Libya? Libya once had the highest life expectancy on the African continent. It was the most prosperous African country. And then what did the imperialists do? They degrew Libya and they bombed and destroyed it. And now the country is in ruin and people are trying to get out. They're drowning in the Mediterranean trying to get out. China endured 100 years of degrowth at the hands of the British Empire. The British Empire waged 2 opium wars to force China to accept their domination. But then, starting with Dr. Sun Yat-sen and his nationalist movement, and then culminating in the 1949 revolution led by Mao Zedong and the Communist Party, China broke free. And it industrialized, and it's raised its people up. And China has rejected degrowth. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, we saw what their global financial system was bringing. They told us, oh, communism is just so bad. And then after the fall of the Soviet Union, the country was devastated. And there was mass poverty and looting and impoverishment. Degrowth was imposed on Russia, and the population decreased by 10%. People either died or fled the country. All the state assets were being sold off to the highest bidder. Well, Putin fixed it by putting oil and gas under public ownership and restructuring the economy and using government power to control the natural resources and restructure the economy and rebuilding Russia into, once again, a powerful country that is lifting its people up. Degrowth is what the imperialists seek to impose, and growth is what human beings naturally long for. And we are pro-growth. And it gets confusing to be pro-growth in our time because around the world, the bulk of the countries that have broken out of Western domination have done it in the name of socialism and have restructured their economy with a centrally planned economy, and they've built it up, and their ideology has been socialist or Marxist. That's not always the case. Russia no longer believes in Marxism. They are a Christian nation following the Russian Orthodox Church. There's a lot of Russian nationalism. There's a lot of Muslims in Russia, but it's no longer a communist-led country. Iran is the Islamic Revolution of Iran. They reject Marxism entirely, but they have a planned economy. They've built their country up on economic growth. There are different forms, but largely it's been in the name of leftist politics, of socialism, that countries have broken out of Western domination. But today, in the United States, leftist politics is run by degrowth fascists. Leftist politics in America is run by people who oppose economic growth. They want to degrow the world. They openly say so. They write books about degrowth, a world beyond capitalism. They promote Malthusianism. They want to drive down the population. They want everyone to have less. They want to impoverish people. The bulk of so-called leftism is not about empowering the whole community. It's about dividing people based on identity. It's not about mobilizing against the international financial elite that has all the power. It's not about mobilizing against Wall Street, and it's not about mobilizing against the big bankers who dominate the United States. Instead, it's about inciting resentment among different groups among the population. It's about telling women that they should be mad at men. It's about telling black people that they should be mad at white people. It's about telling English immigrant folks they should be mad at non-immigrant folks. It's about telling people that are LGBT that they should be mad at people that are some other kind of LGBT or express their LGBT in the wrong way. And you look at these transgender internet forums, and what do? They just tear down other trans people. Leftism has been taken over by a satanic spirit of resentment, jealousy, and pessimism. Right? And it's all about degrowth. It's all about tearing people down. It's all about being mad at your neighbor because they have 5% more than you or 10% more than you. And then they say that if you dare to criticize Wall Street, if you dare to criticize the big monopolies and corporations that dominate this country, if you dare stand with Iran or Venezuela or, God forbid, Russia or China, they say that you are anti-Semitic. That's what they say. You're anti-Semitic. Well, that tells you a lot. And who is paying for all of this so-called leftism, all this so-called socialism in America? I'll tell you who's paying for it. George Soros is paying for it, a Hungarian billionaire. I'll tell you who's paying for it. The Ford Foundation is paying for it. I'll tell you who's paying for it. The Rockefeller think tanks are paying for it. I'll tell you who's paying for it. Goldman Sachs is paying for it. I'll tell you who's paying for it. The international bankers at BlackRock are paying for it. And leftism, socialism in China was about building up China. Socialism in Venezuela is about building up Venezuela. Socialism in Nicaragua was about building up Nicaragua. Socialism in Vietnam is about building up Vietnam. But socialism in America, bought and paid for by Wall Street and the richest of the rich, is about tearing down America. And that is not socialism. It is fascism. They want to foment a mob of resentful, angry people who don't hate Wall Street, but hate their neighbors so that they can force us all to be poorer in the name of social justice. And I reject this agenda. And because I've actually been to socialist countries, And because I've spent my adult life in communist groups, and I've actually been to Iran, and I've actually been to Venezuela, I've actually been to Nicaragua, I've spent a lot of times in Russia, I know what actual socialism is. And I know that what they are promoting at the universities right now, this cancel culture crap, this is not socialism. This is fascism. And it is toxic. And it is satanic, and it is exactly what Nicaragua broke free from. It's exactly what Venezuela broke free from. It is exactly what Russia and China broke free from. And it is exactly what America will break free from as we build a mass movement in this country to unleash human creativity and build and construct and bring people together and create bonds of community and brotherhood. That is what we are striving to do. We are not here to preach hate. We are here to reject hate. We are not building a movement based on resentment of people who might have 5% or 10% more than us. We are not building a movement about tearing down people who might have it slightly better than we do. We're trying to build a movement to raise our country up by defeating imperialism, the rule of the world, by the big monopolies and banks. That is what we are doing. And because we have dared to look the socialist movement in the face and say, you have nothing to do with what Russia is doing. You have nothing to do with what China is doing. You are against the American people. You are building angry mobs of resentful, alienated people to enforce the will of the ultra-rich. Because we dare say that, we have faced a huge amount of persecution, but we will not surrender. We are the Center for Political Innovation, and we are innovationists. We believe in growth. We believe in humanity. We believe in love and brotherhood. We are optimistic. That's what we are. And we are the future of this country. And more Americans are coming to understand that we are right. We point the way out of World War III. We point the way toward economic prosperity and abundance. That's what we point to. That's what we advocate. And that's what we will continue to push. We are not hateful. We are not seeking to divide people on racial or ethnic lines. We are not trying to push any kind of culture war. Some of us are for gay marriage and some of us are not. Some of us are for abortion and some of us are not. We are neutral on cultural issues, and we are united around a 4-point economic program to rebuild our country. And we are united in our solidarity with those around the world that are struggling against imperialism. We are against imperialism and opposing a system that impoverishes people, opposing a system that is at odds with the bulk of what the human race wants and is at odds with the very nature of human beings and their drive for growth. That is not a hate message in any conceivable way. That is the purest form of love. And I would say that our message is spiritual. We are seeking to connect people with their soul, with their inner godlike creativity. We're helping people to discover how to love and connect with their fellow human beings. We are helping people to learn who they truly are and to push aside all the negativity that is pumped out of this society every day. We are doing something utterly amazing and special with the Center for Political Innovation. We are doing things that no one will do. Yesterday in New York City, we launched a project. And I don't want to show you too much of it because a very, very professional video is on its way. Peter Coffin is editing together a very well-made and professional video of what we did yesterday. But I'm going to show you just a taste of what we did yesterday because it was not easy. Shout out to Phil from Brooklyn. Shout out to Briggy from Pennsylvania. Shout out to Noah from Boston. Shout out to Irving from Manhattan. We moved mountains yesterday. It was not easy. We moved mountains yesterday, and, between getting the banner to Central Park and getting the PVC pipes, between getting that banner together and hoisting it on our shoulders, between then marching that banner over to Trump Tower and then speaking out at Trump Tower for 3 hours. We had a 3-hour rally at Trump Tower. It was an amazing day yesterday. And so I just have a couple short clips I will show you, but this is not everything that we showed you. But our message is unique. If you see this video, and when you see the whole video, you'll really get it. But take a look at some of what we did yesterday. You will see how amazing our organization is. We do things that no one else can imagine.
Great again. We want to say America first, not Israel first. America first, not Taiwan first.
That's right.
America first, not Ukraine first. We want to put America first and not the criminals who are lining their pockets on Wall Street with American taxpayer money to go bomb children overseas. The real America is not with the bankers, it's not the criminals on Wall Street. The real America would benefit.
Yeah. Here, I'll show you another clip. Right? Our banner says only peace can make America great again. It's an 8x12 banner of Trump and Kim shaking hands.
Give peace a chance. Have you ever heard the phrase, give peace a chance? I'm here to ask you, give peace a chance. I'm here to say peace is possible, but we have to give it a chance. We have to let it see the light of day. We have to let it see that there is a moment in time where we can all stand together and be one. We are the members of the Legislative Nation. We're here to ask you to join with us, to give peace a chance. And if you don't join with us, join with someone. Join with a family member. Be unified with someone who you decided didn't deserve a chance because someone said they didn't agree with you, so you needed to cut them loose. No! We are here to say, unify with your family members. Unify with your loved ones. So what they don't agree with you? Who cares if they don't? We only have one life, and we live that life every day. But you die once. Make sure that you unify with your loved ones. Don't say that they're nothing. Don't listen to what they tell you on television. That's what they want you to believe, that they're worth nothing. Believe the oligarchs at your own peril. Believe them and sleep under a bridge. Believe them and not have a job. Believe them and understand you'll never have health care. Believe them and see what you get. See what you're getting now? Nothing. And you will get more of that, and more of that, and more of that, until there is nothing, until there is no one to stand up for you. Let's stand up for each other. Let's believe in one another. Let's believe that peace is possible. Peace is here. Peace can live and thrive here in America. It thrives in your hearts. It thrives around the world. But we must stand up for each other, not just in our little corners of the world, not just in our little corners of the planet, but all over the world. Donald.
Yep. I'll show you a couple more clips.
America great again. Only peace will make America great again. We need to go back to this moment when Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America, went to a country that we have technically been at war with since 1952 and said, let's give peace a chance. We want Trump to be a peace candidate. Every poll says that the American people want peace. Americans don't want their tax dollars to be dumped into a hole, funding wars around the world so that bankers on Wall Street can play a game of dominating the economies of the world, while Americans are starving in ditches all across this country, while there are homeless people sitting 3 blocks from the White House, in the richest country on the face of the earth, so-called, We have homeless people on every block, on every street, on every city. Why is that? $18 million a day goes to just one country for which we are funding these wars. The people in Palestine, the people in North Korea, the people in Venezuela and China and Russia, they are not our enemies. It's the bankers on Wall Street and it's the neocons who pushed Trump to do the very things that the mainstream media celebrated him for and then stabbed him in the back as soon as he left office. The same people who are endorsing his enemies are the same people who are pushing him to be a war candidate. We should be a peace candidate. The American people want peace. If Donald Trump wants to get back in the White House, we say that he needs to do what the American people want him to do, and that is to make peace around the world, to economically develop. Imagine all the money that could be made by American businesses if we went to North Korea and we helped them to develop their economy, rather than keeping thousands of American troops south of their border to intimidate and isolate them. Why is there a need to impose sanctions on all these countries rather than develop their economies? Think of all of the money that could be made if we built railroads, if we built highways, if American companies could go in and make money in countries like the DPRK, like Venezuela, mutually developing, not pillaging for people who in no way benefit the American people. The people on Wall Street who push Trump to do war, people in the military-industrial complex who are lining their...
Yep. It was a great day yesterday, and you're going to see a lot more of it. You're going to see all how we put the banner together, and there's a lot more coming. So stay tuned. I don't want to ruin it by showing you any more. But those were just some of the great moments that happened yesterday. Yes, CPI is one of a kind, and we are doing something very, very exciting. And I'm very, very proud of our organization and everything that we have accomplished. And you'll be hearing more about this campaign because that banner, we didn't throw it away, and we still got the polls and we still got everything. And it's just the 3rd of October. And for the month of October, when people are debating this upcoming election, we need to have this banner be part of the conversation. That banner that you just saw there that says "Only peace can make America great again," that needs to be everywhere. It needs to be part of the conversation. And none of these fake socialist groups would ever have the courage to have a banner like that. And the right is not going to have a banner like that because they're very confused and they're very, they don't get it. But that banner is why many Americans voted for Trump, because they see him as pro-growth. They see Donald Trump as a candidate who wants to build and construct, and they saw him go and make peace with countries around the world. And so, I'm glad you can feel the energy here, and we are nice people. And we're doing the best that we can. And this is a very hard time. It's a very, very hard time to organize. It's a very, very hard time to stand up for truth and justice. But we're doing it. No one's going to do it for us. We have to do it. We have to build the movement that this country desperately needs. We have got to stop the low-wage police state, and we've got to stop the march toward World War III. That is what we must do. And so we have decided we have no choice but to build our organization, the Center for Political Innovation, and get it done. And that is what we need to do. We have no other choice. And I've got a lot of different things I could say tonight, and I've got a lot on my mind. I was working on an article earlier today about one of these fake socialist groups that's running a presidential campaign and how deceptive they are being. So I'll probably come out with that soon, but that's probably not what you all want me to talk about on here. There's a lot of different topics we could get into, but I'm here laying out the basics about what our organization stands for and why we are aiming to build our Center for Political Innovation, our innovationist movement, and why we are so necessary, because we are extremely necessary. No one can do it for us. We have something very, very special to offer. Peter Coffin is coming out with an amazing documentary on Sunday. It will premiere. It's really good. I watched it ahead of time. It's why left and right are bullshit, horseshoe theory, why it's true, but not in the way you think. It's really a great film that he made. It goes into a lot of detail about the very topics we talk about on these streams. I'm so excited for Peter's upcoming documentary. It's really going to be fantastic. And we're going to do a pre-stream on this channel to talk about Peter Coffin's upcoming documentary. And then we've got the workshop that is taking place next week in the Chicago area. So please register and attend our workshop. Link is down below to register. You can also register here at this link. You know, we have got a workshop coming up, and you'll be able to get involved in this movement and see what we're doing and help us carry out our goals on a local level. We're building up for a huge convention next summer. And that convention will be in the Chicago area next summer in July. And we aim to have 400 people attend that convention. That is our goal. We've got plenty of time to build it, but we're starting this weekend with a great workshop that we're doing in the Chicago area. So we need you to come, right? You know, it is free. We do ask a contribution if you can afford it, but if you can't afford it, we still want you to be there because it's a really, really important workshop and we need you to attend. And we've got people registered to attend, and we're getting ready to send out the confirmation email. But we need people there. We need to build this movement, right? There was a recent stream where I went over everything that CPI has done so far this year. I'm not going to do that again tonight because it would get repetitive, but we have done so much, right? There is a way to be active. A lot of people don't know that you can't do anything but be a passive internet viewer, but you can get involved. You can take responsibility for your future. You can build a better world, build a better country, build a movement. You can do it. And we can help you do it. And we are trying to facilitate the movement that is desperately needed. That is what we are doing. And so we need you to get involved. And that is what we are aiming to do. Now, recently, Jimmy Dore, he made some pretty awesome remarks. There was a rally in Washington, D.C. that we were official sponsors of called Rage Against the War Machine. And at that rally, Jimmy Dore made some amazing comments. So I am going to pull up those comments and show you what Jimmy Dore said in his great speech that he gave at the rally that recently took place last weekend. I'm gonna pull that up. I love Jimmy Dore. I've been on his show a few times, and it's always an honor to go on there. He is really, really awesome, and I really love going on his program. And so I'm gonna show you. Jimmy Dore just hits the nail on the head. He really, really does. And he says what needs to be said. And he says it at the right time also. And so I am going to show you what Jimmy Dore said, at the anti-war rally. His speech hit home. If I can just find the clip, I will pull it up for you. It was really, really tremendous, his remarks. Yeah. Let me just pull it up here. Hold on. But I had the clip already, but then that's how these things go. So, just got to pull up the clip. Sorry about that, folks. Just getting everything together. That's how these things go. I am a big fan of Jimmy Dore, and I'm really glad that he was able to speak. This was actually at the Rescue the Republic rally. It was held the day after the Rage Against the War Machine rally. It was the same crew that put it on, but there was different messages because there are different beliefs. But here we go. This was Jimmy Dore at the Restore the Republic rally that was held. I'm just going to show you the clip of Jimmy. So hold on. Hold your horses. All right, here we go. Hold on. Here we go. Do. All right. And all right, here he is.
Now there's a wave of censorship happening in protest. That means we have to stand up for the right of protest for pro-Palestinian protesters, because if they can shut them down, they can shut us down. And the people who want to shut down the pro-Palestinian protesters say, well, those college protesters, they don't even know what they're protesting for. And it's a good thing they don't, because if they did, they'd be fucking right. I have my Zionist friends who try to get me to go along with Israel. They say to me, they go, Jimmy, you know, I know you support the LGBTQ. You know who doesn't? Hamas. Hamas doesn't support gay people. What do you say to that, Jimmy? I say, oh, I guess we should slaughter their children. Anyway. People say that Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East. You know why? Because we overthrew all the other fucking democracies so we can steal their oil.
Yeah. That's Jimmy Dore. That's Jimmy Dore, and he is absolutely tremendous, and he gets it. He had this absolutely epic rant in his chat with Tucker Carlson, where he just talked about why the so-called left doesn't get it and why the so-called left can't lead a mass movement.
Him that when he talks about white supremacy, the majority of people in America who are poor are white. And if you're going to try to lecture coal miners about white supremacy, it's going to fall flat. And if he's out there being a black activist, he could talk about white supremacy. But if you're trying to run for president and actually oppose the establishment, the last thing you should do is try to lead with trans issues or LGBTQ, or because you know what? If you get a living wage for everybody, that helps everybody, especially trans and LGBTQ, black and white. If you get health care for everybody, that helps everybody, meaning black and white. So if you start to, what the establishment wants people like Cornel West to do is to keep talking about white supremacy, to keep talking about trans issues, to keep talking about LGBTQ as if they're an oppressed minority like they were in the 90s when I started comedy. Back then, they couldn't get married. They could get fired from their job. They couldn't get housing. That's all over. They have and so to keep pretending like we're living 30 years ago is exactly what the establishment wants to do. And by the way, all this talk about trans issues and talk about white, this doesn't come from the grassroots up. This comes directly from BlackRock and Larry Fink. This comes from Vanguard. This is so the most murderous companies who are raping the planet can shroud themselves in an air of virtue. And how do they do it? They do it by trans issues and LGBTQ and white supremacy and inclusion and equity and all that stuff. And that's there to keep us divided, because the only thing that scares the establishment is when people from the left and the right realize they have more in common that divides us, and they have shared enemy, and that shared enemy is the oligarchy. That's the only thing that scares them. And so if they can keep us talking about race, and if they can keep us talking about gender and ethnicity, that's a gift to them, because it keeps everybody divided. Would you?
Yeah. I mean, that was Jimmy Dore with Tucker Carlson, and it was absolutely tremendous. It was absolutely tremendous. And Jimmy Dore actually went on Tucker Carlson's TV show on Fox before Tucker Carlson was banned. And we're going to pull that one up too, because it was really, really amazing. Jimmy Dore is such an important figure. And Jimmy Dore, I consider him to be a friend. And he's been my friend, even in tough situations. He's reached out to me and been like, hey, I'm there for you. And, CPI people, we go to his shows and we distribute our books, and he's always very, very friendly. It's always really, really great. When Jimmy Dore, the way he has treated our community, he loves CPI. He absolutely loves us. He's given us shout outs many times. He's had me on his program. Like, Jimmy Dore is one of us, right? He is on our side. And so is Garland Nixon. And so is Scott Ritter. I mean, we have a number of people that are friendly to our community and understand how important what we do is. So I'm going to put on, this is another clip of Jimmy Dore when he was on Fox giving an anti-war message.
It's not up the great Jon Stewart Nazi medal.
Third term and said his work 5. So what should we take of this? Again, you can be deeply skeptical, in fact, hostile toward China, and still be worried about going to war with China. Jimmy Dore is the host of the Jimmy Dore Show. He joins us tonight to assess. Jimmy, should we be paying attention to a memo like this? What do you think it means?
What I think it means is that the United States is trying to provoke and sable rattle with another nuclear power, right? This is what we were supposed to be afraid of was going to happen with Donald Trump, right? We couldn't have, he's a crazy man who's going to have his finger on the nuclear button. And now we have Demented Joe, who is saber rattling with 2 nuclear powers, and they get the corporate media sponsored by the military industrial complex to get Americans to cheer it on. And why do Americans cheer it on? Because they have no idea what's actually happening with their foreign policy. And what's worse is they have no idea that they have no idea that they don't have any idea what's happening with their foreign policy. We have 400 military bases surrounding China since the Korean War. Do we really think that China is getting ready to invade the United States? Because I tell you, they're not. They make everything we use in the United States. Why? Because the same people who want this war are the same people who took the good jobs that are manufacturing jobs in America, turned them into low-paying, crappy jobs, and then shipped them to China. And then we get angry at them for the system that we set up. If they're so corrupt, because that's the thing, Americans have no idea how corrupt their government is. They think our government's just regular corrupt, like, oh, Trump gave his son a job or Biden gave his kid a no-show job in the Ukraine war. That's not, the whole thing is corrupt. The $800 billion military budget is $800 billion of corruption. Why do we have to have 900 military bases around? We're the ones provoking this war, just like we provoked the war in Ukraine. We are now provoking a war with China. And who benefits? I'll tell you right now, your enemy is not China. Your enemy is not Russia. Your enemy is the military industrial complex, which has been fleecing this country to the tunes of hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars. How many times are we going to have a defense secretary say, hey, we can't account for $2 trillion in the Pentagon again? That, like, which has happened twice now in my lifetime. So again, people are being, the war machine cannot be stopped. Who's running this country? The war machine. It certainly isn't Joe Biden making these decisions. I would like to know who is making the decisions. And I just want to remind everybody, the United States is the world's terrorist. We just set the Middle East on fire in the last 20 years. And now we're doing a proxy war in Ukraine, which we provoked, NATO provoked, and it was just admitted that we provoked it by the former prime minister of Germany. And now we're trying to saber rattle with China, and they're predicting a war. Again, China's not going to invade us. China's not our enemy. We might have an economic war. That's what these are. These are economic wars. These are wars for, in Ukraine, it's about liquefied natural gas and making sure Germany and Russia never come together, because we fear Russia's natural resources and manpower, and we fear them getting together with Germany with their technology and their capital. And so that's why we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. That's why we're doing the Ukraine war. This is all about hegemony, imperialism, and economics. And if there's a Marine somewhere, it's there because they're about to steal some natural resources from another country. As everybody's screaming about what a bad guy Putin is for invading Ukraine, the United States is currently occupying a third of Syria. And which third is that? It's the third that has the oil. And how do I know we're there to steal their oil? Because the president of the United States said so.
We're not even benefiting economically. That's, I mean, of course, that's the rub. Jimmy Dore, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's Jimmy Dore. That is Jimmy Dore. And so I will show you just a small clip from when he had me on to talk about how they banned my Kamala Harris book from Amazon. He had me talk about how Kamala Harris is Hillary Clinton's handpicked successor.
Hey, I'll see you on tour in
Kamala Harris is the favored candidate of the people who ran the State Department under Hillary Clinton. And that is very clear. And that there were disagreements between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. He got rid of Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State and replaced her with John Kerry. And that when Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State during Obama's first term, we saw what happened, which was they were fomenting unrest and chaos all over the world. in order to bring down governments they did not like. The government of Libya was the most prosperous country on the African continent. And, we saw what happened, which is cruise missiles. It was destroyed. Now the country's in ruin. People are drowning in the Mediterranean trying to get out of Libya. Syria was reduced to a civil war, millions of refugees, hundreds of thousands dead. And a lot of that was the U.S. State Department coordinating with social media to create unrest. And the result, we had the rise of ISIS and the terrorists in ISIS, and it was a disaster. Well, we understand where this comes from. There was an ideologue named Anne-Marie Slaughter, who's with New America, or sometimes it's called the New America Foundation, the New American Institute. It's a think tank, and she openly talked about what she believed in. I mean, she wrote a very powerful essay talking about how the fight in the world today is between what she calls the open international system, globalism, and populists, and how populist leaders like Gaddafi in Libya, like Bashar Assad, or like Putin in Russia, or like, the people who support Brexit in Britain or Marine Le Pen, populist leaders are the danger, and that we need to promote this open international system, and that the goal is to foment unrest and chaos around the world to protect that open international system. And that's very openly stated by the Hillary Clinton State Department, by Anne-Marie Slaughter, Samantha Power, and others. And there was a decision that was made in 2020 when it was made clear that Hillary Clinton couldn't run again. There was a meeting that was widely reported on in the local press in the Hamptons in Long Island, where all the Hillary Clinton backers took their money from Hillary Clinton and they put it behind Kamala Harris. She is Hillary Clinton's chosen successor. And I go over in the book about how it looks a lot like Joe Biden did everything he could to not name her as the VP. It was a very late decision. The Democrat National Convention schedule, you'll remember in 2020, listed Kamala Harris as separate from the VP speaker. After that schedule came out, Kamala Harris unfollowed Joe Biden on Twitter, and it looked like she was not going to be the VP nominee. 6 hours later, she was named the VP nominee. It was 10 days late, and the Biden administration did everything they could to avoid her. And if you look at what's come out since she's been in office, her staff, she can't keep them. There is a toxic atmosphere in her office. She is just, she is brutal to her staff. She doesn't make any mistakes. The only mistakes that can be made are by them. There is an atmosphere that is very competitive. Nobody on Capitol Hill likes the Harris people, they're called, for the way they treat other people. There is something particularly dangerous about Kamala Harris. And the more you look into it, it's not simply a matter of a very ambitious person. It's a matter of somebody who is very indifferent to other people's suffering. It's a matter of somebody who has a lot of pain and trauma and rage and a desire for vengeance. There is some really dangerous stuff going on there. And she is in an alliance with the regime change apparatus, the people that want to spread chaos and tear down governments around the world to preserve this open international system. There's a lot there people should be concerned about.
Hey, I'll see you on tour in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that was Jimmy Dore, who after, I wrote this book 4 years ago. I wrote it in September of 2020, Kamala Harris and the Future of America. And it was selling for 4 years, a few hundred copies sold. And then the day that Kamala Harris got the nomination, they took it down from Amazon. And for 7 days, this book wasn't available. And Max Blumenthal spoke up about it. And Jimmy Dore spoke up about it. And Kim Iverson spoke up about it. And there was mass outrage. They would ban a book criticizing the presidential candidate, Kamala Harris. And so my book went viral and thousands of copies sold. And then we distributed copies at the DNC. And we had thousands handed out. 1,000 copies were handed out. A great team of volunteers out in Chicago. Shout out to Ellie and John and Gabby and Phil and all the people that worked really, really hard. Gavin, all the people who worked hard in Chicago to distribute the book during the DNC. We made a point of getting this message out there about who Kamala Harris really is. The Center for Political Innovation, is at this point, I would say, a very vital and important organization. That is what we are. Nobody does what we do. And, you know, we get shit done on a level that you wouldn't believe. I mean, we were just out there at Trump Tower. Maybe I'll show you one more clip of Trump Tower before we start opening up for questions. And please keep the questions rolling in, because it's you all that make the second half of the show happen, right? I need you all to ask me some questions so I have something to talk about in the second half of the show. That's what the second half of the show is for me to answer your questions. So let's I'll show you one more clip, you know, and then from there we can maybe do our roll call, and I'll start answering questions. So here we go.
All right, so we're out here in Trump Tower with a banner. And here on this banner, you will see the greatest thing that Donald Trump did in his entire presidency. He went and became the first president to ever visit the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea. This is a country that's been technically at war with the United States since the 1950s. But Donald Trump went there and offered a hand of friendship. He talked about peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. And we're out here, some of us are going to vote for Trump, and some of us aren't, but we're out here to say this is the man that we want Donald Trump to be. We want Donald Trump to be a peace president. We want Donald Trump to make deals around the world. We want Donald Trump to bring peace to this world, peace through economic development. We are here to say that only peace can make America great again. And that what Donald Trump did on North Korea, that was awesome. And we want that to continue. We want more peace negotiations. We want more trade. We want more diplomacy. Let's start doing business with the world instead of bombing the world. Let's start rebuild America, rebuild our country instead of bombing countries around the world. Let's do business, have some business deals with Russia, some business deals with China, some business deals with Cuba and Iran and Venezuela and all the countries the war makers are telling us to hate. Russia's not our enemy, China's not our enemy, North Korea is not our enemy. Our enemy is the war lobby. Our enemy is the military-industrial complex. And if we really love America, we should demand that they take all the money they spend on bombs and tanks and weapons and rebuild this country. America first means peace. America first means peace, spreading peace around the world, not spreading war around the world. We're here to say only peace can make America great again. We want Donald Trump to be a peace president. That's what we're out here to say. Put the American people and their jobs and their schools and their education first. Make peace with countries around the world. Repeat what he did in North Korea, in many, many different countries. In fact, continue what he did. Let's tear down the demilitarized zone. Let's make peace with the two Koreas. Imagine a unified Korea where those people that have been divided are once again living in peace with each other. We have the dream of one unified heavenly Korea. Donald Trump made it possible. He opened the door to peace with North Korea, and we think that is tremendous. Only peace can make America great again. And we are out here to say only peace can make America great again. This was a beautiful moment, and we hope he does this not just on the Korean Peninsula, but in many, many different countries around the world. Imagine peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Imagine peace in Ukraine. Imagine peace in South America and so many of the countries where the drug gangs and the narcos have created chaos. Only peace can make America great again. And economic development, building bridges, building highways, building towers. Economic development is the road to peace. Peace can only be created in trade and development and economic growth. Only peace can make America great again. And this is the man that we want Donald Trump to be. This brought tears to my eyes. I was so moved when this happened. To see the President of the United States and the President of North Korea shaking hands. This is what the new world could be. This is who we want Donald Trump to be. We want him to be a peace president. We want him to be a peace candidate in this election. We say only peace can make America great again. We're the Center for Political Innovation, and we are out here saying only peace can make America great again. This is who we want Donald Trump to be. Some of us are going to vote for him, some of us won't, but he needs to be a peace candidate because only peace can make America great again. Only peace can make America great again. We're not going to make the world great with missiles. We're not going to make the world great with bombs. We're going to make the world great with jobs, with with healthcare, with electrification. That's how the world will be made great, and that's how America can be great. Spend the money, spend our tax money on new highways, bridges, and power plants. Bring the military home to help the people who've been affected by this hurricane. Why is it that people in North Carolina are left stranded while the National Guard is in the Middle East? We say America first. America first. Make America great again by making peace in the world. We got a lot of different people out here with a lot of different messages. Some of us are voting for Donald, some of us aren't. It's not about that. It's about a bigger message, which is peace. Only peace can make America great again. Only peace can make America great again. Only peace can make America great again. Jobs, schools, healthcare, education, not bombs and tanks and drones and destruction. Only peace can make America great again. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, it was a great day yesterday. My voice is still recovering a little bit. I had to rest and recover from everything that happened yesterday. Very tremendous day. I see a couple more super chats have come in, and we've had a couple Rumble rants that have come in as well. So on that note, folks, let's do the roll call, and I'll call you all out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? I will call you all out as I see you, and then from there, I'll start answering questions. Who's with us tonight? We got Dustin in Cleveland, Ryan in Kansas City. Have you registered for the workshop yet, Ryan? We hope you can be there. It's going to be a great workshop. You're driving distance. Sign up. Noble from Pakistan, Scott in Maryland, the Berg, Mariah in North Carolina, Joseph Johnson in Chicago. Have you registered for the workshop yet? We need you there. Vancouver, McClellan, John in Chicago, who I know is coming. April and Chris in Salt Lake City, Jacob in Wisconsin. Have you registered for the workshop? Netherlands, Geldrop, David in Nevada, Rice from Adelaide, Australia, Detroit, Anthony, Mikhail in Windsor, Ontario, Martin from the Irish Republic, Salt Lake City, Utah, communist majoritarian, Jenny in Cincinnati, Patch in Arizona, Alex in Brazil, Auckland, New Zealand, Stephanie in D. Miguel Allende, Mexico, Bradenton, Florida, John from Bradenton, Florida, Dan in the Los Angeles area, peace will make America great again. Great stuff. China, season new, Briggy in Pennsylvania. Welcome, Briggy. Names and locations. Names, Mike from the Netherlands. Welcome, Mike. Good to have you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else? I like Utah. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who's with us? Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. If you'd like to register for the workshop, it would be great to have you there. It's going to be in the Chicago area. It will be on October 12th. We're having all day, starting early in the morning and ending late at night. Sign up for the workshop. Go ahead and register for the workshop. It's going to be awesome. Awesome. We got Mike in Lancaster, Devin in West Virginia. Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. All right. All right. I did want to say something that I meant to say earlier. If you support the Party of Socialism and Liberation, if you think voting for PSL is a good thing to do in this upcoming election, I will debate you on that point. And I will open this program to anyone who would like to debate me about PSL, because I maintain that voting for PSL is not a good thing to do. And I noticed that it's not just PSL that is voting for itself. There's a few other socialist groups that have endorsed them. I say don't endorse them. I say PSL, if you read their platform, there's a lot in it that is not good. So if you would like to debate me on that point, I would happily debate you on that point. So if you would like to debate me on that point, I guess, or if you just want to stop in and say hello, I am opening up this stream to people. Let me get the link for you, and I'm going to drop the link in the chat. And if you want to debate me about voting for PSL, you can hop on. I am dropping the link. Debate me on PSL. I'm dropping the link in the chat, and you can come on and debate me on that point. I will debate anyone who wants to debate that point. And you can debate me on that point by coming in. There's the link. I'll drop it in the Rumble rant, and you can debate me on PSL. I am ready to have that argument because I think we need to have that argument, and that by showing why PSL, despite speaking in the name of anti-imperialism and socialism, is actually on the wrong side, I will have that conversation with you. So jump on if you are up to have that debate, or if you just want to drop in, right? If you want to join the conversation, you can also join the conversation. I would prefer people send super chats. That's the best way to do things. But if somebody wants to jump on, and talk to me tonight about something other than PSL, that's fine too. I'm full of piss and vinegar at PSL. Bring it on. Anyone who wants to defend PSL, the phone lines are open, as they say in the radio world. The phone lines are open. The phone lines are open. If you want to debate me on PSL or join the conversation, in the radio world, they say the phone lines are open. Right now, the phone lines are open on this show. So now I will start answering people's super chat questions. I'll do Rumble rants first. That's the way we generally do it. So first super chat. It comes from John McCarthy for Peace. He says, the law used to convict the Uhuru Three is never used, so it has no sentencing precedent. And the Uhuru is asking people to write letters to the judge. And I am going to do that. I am definitely going to do that. It's on my list of things to do, and I need to do it soon because, there's a deadline, and I need to just sit down and get that done. But there's a link that John shared. That's important that people send letters to the judge, as we don't think they should do a day of jail time, not a day of jail time. So hands off Uhuru. There is an important link that John McCarthy shared, and we will be writing letters. They have certain guidelines on the website about how to write your letter. Obviously, you're not trying to make a revolutionary manifesto. You are trying to write a letter that will convince the judge that they should not be imprisoned. So it's a little bit of a different circumstance. So you want to follow their guidelines in writing your letter. That's a very, very important thing to do. So thank you, John, for sharing that. Now, Hempcar says there's a lot of needed lithium in the Carolinas. Do you think weather weapons caused the hurricane? No, I do not. Pasta said Ahmadinejad said the U.S. used them on Iran, and there's U.S. laws against their use. I mean, the USA does, seed the clouds, cloud seeding in order to cause rain. That happens. But I really, I really don't think that the USA, I don't understand why that would be to their benefit to cause a hurricane because there's lithium in North Carolina. I'm not buying that one yet. That's a little bit of a stretch for me, Hempcar. I mean, anything is possible, never say never. There's been many conspiracy theories that have turned out to be true, but there you go. He said, I used to think chemtrails was a conspiracy until Kucinich drafted a bill. Well, what I've noticed with with so-called conspiracy theories, it's often much more complicated. It's often much more complicated than people make it out to be, right? You know, and they make it complicated. So I see that there's somebody who wants to jump on. They need to show their face if they want to jump on. I only let people on if they show their face. I see they have a strange name and they don't show their face. So you got to show your face. Phil High says, thank you for the shout out. It was fun and honoring launch the program. Yes. Yeah, it was really, really great. And I'm looking forward to the video that's being edited right now and all that. If this Jasonic Lodge guy wants to come on, he needs to show his face. But if not, I'm not going to let you on unless you show your face. No, I'll put that, you know, fair enough. I can't do that, unfortunately, for reasons. All right. Well, sorry. Can't have you on then. But if you come on, you have to show your face, because my face is on here and, you know, I don't want people to pull any funny business. But if you're willing to come on and show your face, we can have ourselves a debate. So we've got, Devin of West Virginia. All right. Next question. When you say you want to rebuild technically, do you want 5G? I honestly don't know the technical details about what 5G entails. I really just don't know. I really don't know. So I can't answer that. And then Hemkar also advises that we call Congress to stop war on Iran, which that sounds good to me. He shared a link for how to do that. And, you know, hey, I'm for that, right? You know, anything to stop war on Iran would be a good thing. So he shared that link to call Congress to stop war on Iran. I think that is a tremendous cause. I am pro-Iran. You know, so there we go. All right. So now I'm going to start answering people's super chat questions in this space. You know, and like I said, the phone lines are open. So I'll put this on the screen. Join the conversation. You don't have to debate me on PSL. You can talk about other stuff. You can talk about other stuff if you want. But if you want to join the conversation or you want to just send a super chat, you can join the conversation. Join the conversation. But that remains after tonight. You know, I mean, if somebody wants to debate me on PSL, you know, by all means. Oh, Gavin. Hey, Gavin. So Gavin's here to convince me to vote for PSL, right? I'm just kidding. Right? I'm teasing. How you doing, Gavin? How you doing?
Doing okay. Yeah. You know,
your volume is very low. Is there a way you could turn up your volume?
You know, how about now?
I can hear you, but it's very quiet.
Okay, why don't you keep doing the stream? I'll log out and see if I try again.
Yeah, or you know, get it closer, or you know, are you using your phone?
I'm using a borrowed laptop that's not as good as mine.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, if you want to try to fix the audio and then come back on, that's fine. All right. But yeah, okay. Well, he's going to try and fix his audio. But the phone lines remain open. Hope Gavin comes back on. Gavin's a good friend of ours. He's great. He asks great questions, and he'll probably want to comment on what Bishop Kirill said about evolution. I didn't follow that case, but he'll probably got a super chat about it. And I don't really know what's going on there. Brownie Vanquisher, thank you. Let's go. Thank you. Both appreciated. And then what are the major factions which within both the Democrat and Republican Party? Well, that's a good question. The Democratic Party at this point is very solidly divided between the urban political machines and the intelligence apparatus, the Silicon Valley intelligence apparatus. And that seems to be a very, very clear divide. You know, Google and Facebook and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and the intelligence agencies, they want to run the Democrat Party, but the Democrat Party runs major cities. It runs San Francisco, it runs New York City, it runs Chicago, and a lot of very powerful Democrats come out of those machines. Nancy Pelosi is a product of the San Francisco machine. Joe Biden ran Delaware. He ran that machine. And that there are a number of. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Caleb. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
I just wanted to check. Oh, hold on.
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, I'm hearing.
So I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me the honor.
It sounds like it's our rally, so maybe try to fix that before you. Right. So there you go.
All right, sorry about that.
No problem. Well, all right. I'll continue with. The Democratic Party seems to be very, very heavily divided between the political machines of the urban centers and the Silicon Valley tech monopolies. AOC is very much a Silicon Valley tech monopoly figure, and Bill de Blasio was in with that crowd. But our local Democrat mayor, who's on the verge of leaving, he's going to be booted out of office pretty soon. It looks like he's going to step down any day now because he's indicted. He was a Democrat, a police department Democrat, a local urban political machine Democrat, and that's Eric Adams. He's about to get booted out, right? And that, Andrew Cuomo was also a New York City Democrat, and he's about to get booted as well. So, those are the two major factions in the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, on the other hand, is kind of a mixture of different constituencies, right? You have, on the one hand, you have the neoconservatives that were just kind of the main foreign policy folks, but they're kind of losing ground in the Republican Party. You have the MAGA Trump faction that are more kind of nationalistic, and they're kind of anti-war. And you have a layer of what they call trad Catholics that are sympathetic to them, that are Roman Catholics that are kind of at odds with the American political establishment. In addition to that, you have a lot of immigrant constituencies, right? Miami Cubans have a lot of power in the Florida Democrat Party, right? So there we go. So I guess Gavin is back. Hey, so you have your microphone also? Is that how it works? You have a microphone and a camera? Okay, you're both muted, so you're going to unmute your microphone.
Okay.
Is that how it works?
How does that sound? Can you hear me?
That sounds great. Okay, so now, all right, very good. So is there a way I can? Okay, well, just talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt what you were saying in answering the super chat. Why don't you go with that first?
No, I was just saying that the Democrats are mainly divided between the Silicon Valley intelligence apparatus and the urban political machines. And that's an old divide. Jimmy Carter, he did Abscam, and that was targeted at what they called the smokestack Democrats that were pro-nuclear power and pro-organized labor that were tied in with the urban political machines, a lot of whom were Roman Catholics and that you can even go back further to when the Democratic Party purged the Roosevelt wing. There's always been kind of a push and pull between organized labor and local urban political machines that are very nepotistic, and then kind of the Ford Foundation and the intelligence agencies that are using, left identity politics and stuff to push their own agenda, and they don't always line up. And then on top of that, what's that? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Would it be fair to say that the urban political machines are somewhat holding the intelligence wing of the Democrats back in a good way?
Yeah, well, the urban political machines, they have to hand out the goods. So they believe in growth to some degree. And they believe in economic growth. And the busing issue, for example, right? It was, the Ford Foundation, that was a big issue in the 70s, was school busing. And in the name of being anti-racist, they wanted to bus children to schools outside of their neighborhoods in order to be anti-racist. And what that was about was the Ford Foundation had realized that these urban Catholic neighborhoods were a barrier to austerity because they controlled the politics. It'd be like a Polish neighborhood where they were all Polish Catholics. They were all the same ethnicity. A lot of them still spoke Polish, and they could be a block that could block austerity, right? And that they could play like an anti-austerity role. And the same for some of the Irish neighborhoods and others. And so busing was used to kind of break down those neighborhoods, and that the urban political machines tend to be socially more conservative than the rest of the Democratic Party, but they tend to be more economically leftist, more populist, right? Whereas the intelligence apparatus is always pushing austerity. They often do it in the name of environmentalism or social justice or whatever. They're really trying to push kind of a degrowth agenda. That's my analysis.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. What's on your mind tonight?
Oh, nothing too profound. I was hoping that somebody who was voting for, I think there was a Freudian slip that said Claudia de la Riva. It's actually, what is it? Claudia de la Cruz. Would come up and debate, because, I mean, I would like to have an actual PSL represent their genuine position. I mean, some arguments I could think they would make would be that we would agree with is like they're very pro-Cuba and pro-Venezuela. Ideologically, maybe they'd say like they're the only Marxist on the ballot or something like that, which is probably true. If you go to their website, there's definitely a veneer of anti-imperialism and populist economics. So how would you respond to someone who says, I think the best option is, Cruz and Garcia?
Well, I'm actually working on a short article about them, but I went through their agenda, right? And I noticed that one of their talking points, one of their planks, is well, first of all, let me back up. All right. Their platform, as on their website, it has eight like slogans, and then they're followed by like paragraphs, right? And if you read it, it's a combination of two things. One, crazy socialist revolution stuff that isn't going to happen, and also it's just like vague revolutionary rhetoric, and stuff that Joe Biden is for. Right? That's really what they're
like. The people will have the power, plus like id poll, culture war, liberal.
Right. So, you find a lot of talking points, and I'll read a couple of them here that are like, they sound super revolutionary, but there's no like real policy there. Total reorganization of the economy in a way that guarantees everyone in society has their basic needs met. Well, that's great. I agree with that. But what does that mean? That's just, that's just pounding the podium, right? We want to turn the social order upside down and topple those who have all the money and give power to those who do the work. I mean, that's, again, standard socialist rhetoric, but what does that actually mean? A new socialist government based on direct exercise of workers' power. Great, but what does it mean? But when they actually start putting forward real policies, they're policies that Joe Biden is already doing that are bad. Like one of them, the worst one is this: fossil fuel corporations should be immediately taken over by the public and repurposed to generate renewable energy. Think about that, right? That's reducing the amount of electrification of America by about 80%. If you shut down every coal power plant, every oil power plant, everything that uses any fossil fuels, and replaced it with windmills and solar panels, not nuclear, because they're against nuclear power. Yeah. They still have elsewhere. You would be reduced. That's like 20% electrification. So basically, if you live in a rural area, you have no power. How is that pro-working class to take away people's electricity? I noticed, Stalin, Mao, Deng Xiaoping, Hugo Chavez, they build power plants. But see, PSL wants to take power plants down. That's not socialism, right? That's not,
pull yourself up by your bootstraps and go buy a bicycle.
right. Yeah. Right. Set up a bike in your backyard to generate your own electricity. Yeah. There you go. Pedal.
Right. Well, just to play the advocate, when you say on the points that they don't get into specifics, but they say, we should have an economy where everyone can have their needs met. Wouldn't they, you've said yourself sometimes that in debate formats, if you get into specifics of your plan, then people can just poke little holes in it and just kind of get into the like nitpicking and stuff. I mean, is there maybe a good reason for not getting into specifics?
Well, the thing is, what they're doing is that they are making the error of doing a maximum minimum program, when in reality, a revolutionary movement should be building a transitional program, right? This was the old social democrats. They would say, oh, we want, to raise the minimum wage by 2 cents an hour, just basic stuff that everyone in the labor movement was for. And then they would end it with, oh, and eventually we want the workers to control the means of production. We want total socialist revolution. And that was a way to avoid actually pushing forward a revolutionary confrontation. If you read the Bolshevik program, or you read the program of the Chinese Communist Party, the program of real revolutionaries, they put forward a program that's not just some crazy thing that'll never happen, but also challenges property relations, right? I've read many times on here, like the North Korean, the 20-point program of the Korean Workers' Party when they came to power. I've read the Bolsheviks, they had peace, land, and bread, but they also had a more elaborate program that called for nationalization of banks and various things. And, you put forward an actual transitional program of like policies that you could put forward to people that people could actually see happening. Like, oh, I know what that would look like, but it would lead to socialism, right? And PSL is doing the maximum minimum. But what's worse is their minimum program, the minimum things are not things that would make life better for the working class. They're things like getting rid of the power grid, right? So it's worse than that, right? Yeah. I'll point to a couple other things in their platform, that is absolutely not good, right? Lawfare. Right. We know the main way the government has, and around the world, the main way they target anti-imperialists is with what they call lawfare. Christina Kirchner in Argentina, they used corruption charges to jail her. Lula da Silva was railroaded to prison on corruption charges. And they've used lawfare against Donald Trump. I mean, they convicted Donald Trump of like 21 points of, what was it? How many points was it of falsifying business records and all of that? Well, their platform calls for more lawfare laws, right? It says that millionaires and billionaires should no longer be able to buy elections. All campaigning should be publicly financed. Corruption is a bipartisan issue. Super PACs that billionaires use to get around donation limits should be immediately closed. They're calling for stricter regulation of campaigns, and we know what that would lead to, right? And on top of that, they begin it by saying, the section begins with bribery in America is legal and it's called lobbying. Well, what did they just indict the Uhuru movement for? Allegedly being foreign lobbyists. What did they raid Scott Ritter's home for? Alleging he was a foreign lobby. So they want to intensify the ability of the Democrat Party to wage lawfare against people they don't like, right? That's really what it says, right? That they want more anti-corruption laws, more entities that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris can use to target people they disagree with.
That's an interesting point, but don't we need the right anti-corruption laws in the sense that, one of the reasons our political system is the way that it is because the capitalists and the military-industrial complex, they're not regulated or stopped from buying politicians in any way. So, isn't it a matter of a libertarian could say, we don't want to empower the state, but we would say we want to have the right state. And you could say we don't want to empower anti-corruption laws. Couldn't we say we want to have the right anti-corruption laws?
Well, but I think our understanding, this is where we would disagree with Rachel Maddow and people, is they say, oh, citizens united, money out of politics. But we say the rich have always ruled, right? And that, that if anything, the, rulings like Citizens United and all of that have let the lower levels of capital insert themselves into the debate more. And that the way to fight the rich is not by passing campaign finance laws. It's rather by empowering the labor movement, right? And empowering the labor movement to demand concessions and to demand, construction and mobilization and to, demand economic reforms, not to empower the state to regulate. Because in my understanding, anti-corruption laws and campaign finance laws, they've only served to make it so it's just more expensive. So, they get the local politician who gets a donation from the labor union in the wrong way, right? So then he's being bribed by a labor union or whatever. but they, ExxonMobil and BP, Shell, and Chevron can set up super PACs, and they can. I mean, that campaign finance law has always just kind of, because the corruption is inherent, right? It's inherent in the system. The rich are always going to rule, so you're not going to be able to pass a campaign finance law to keep that from happening. And the campaign finance laws are generally just used to weaken lower level capitalists and secure the monopoly of the ultra rich so that they can buy all the politicians.
So we could pass the PRO Act, and we could get rid of the ban on solidarity strikes, and we could, Taft-Hartley, where they can't require people. People could be members of unions without paying, and like we could make better laws on unions, which some mainstream politicians would claim to be for.
Yeah, Joe Biden said he was for the PRO Act, and then he forgot about it. But yeah, the Taft-Hartley anti-labor law, right? It says that, it used to be that if 51% of the workers in any workplace signed a union card, then they were recognized. But now, right, getting a union is a 2-year process overseen by the National Labor Relations Board. And it takes 2 years to carry out a union election. And in some cases, there's been cases where every single person who was there when they started doesn't even work there anymore. And then on top of that, solidarity strikes are illegal under the Taft-Hartley anti-labor law. You can only strike about issues in your own workplace, right? You can't strike in solidarity with other workers. And repeal the Taft-Hartley anti-labor law. That would be a great step forward, right? And empower organized labor to win concessions and such. So a couple other things that are in the PSL platform that are worth complaining about, right? Is that, they spend a lot of time, they are fighting a culture war, right? One of the things that they talked about is, they want, cultural campaigns to uproot sexist attitudes. And I'm laughing because I'm saying the next time I have a fight with my spouse, I'll have to have a struggle session at my workplace because it's, uprooting my sexist attitude, but on top of that, that's what corporate America is already doing. They're already doing that in corporate boardrooms. They're having anti-racist trainings and wokeification. That's exactly what's already happening. What do you think?
And by sexist attitudes, they mean like anti-abortion opinions and like women choosing to stay at home, and you know what I mean? It's not only things that everyone would agree is outright sexism,
Well, right. And I mean that, and then you're going to impose that with like a cultural campaign, right? So then the other thing is that, they want, and then this sounds good on paper, ban discrimination against LGBT people at the workplace and in all public and private institutions. Now, private institutions, that means churches. That means your church shouldn't be allowed to say that homosexuality isn't tolerated.
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't hire a gay pastor, that must have been discrimination, right? I mean, that could happen.
Well, right. And then on top of that, the LGBT, no discrimination against the T, means you have to have, women, men playing sports on the women's team. Right. It means you have to have men going into the women's bathroom. Right. And so that there's a lot of things there that sounds, I mean, obviously I'm against discrimination of any kind. I don't want anyone to feel unwelcome because of who they are. But, if you're saying in all institutions, period, that opens the door to, someone says hire a gay pope now. Right. But, right. If we don't have a gay pope, I mean, all the popes have been straight. What do you do about this? But,
1-800 dial a pope, you ask for the gay one. This whole thing kind of reminds me of like some of that, the Cultural Revolution and like some of the other ultra leftist aspects of communist history where they kind of tried to force equality. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and they're trying to push a cultural agenda. They're not trying to uproot the economic base. They're trying to push a cultural agenda. When they talk about race, that's when it gets particularly interesting. So, right now, obviously, there's a huge amount of outrage in the Black community about police brutality. And my feeling is that's good. I support it. I've been talking about police brutality since before Black Lives Matter was ever tweeted. And that we need to unite it with the general sentiment against the taking away of our rights, against the suppression of civil liberties, right? And that, it goes with them tapping our phones. It goes with, all kinds of things. But instead of saying no to police brutality, no police state, they say stop the war against Black America. And it's like they're trying to separate the black struggle from all the other struggles. And then, of course, they come to the defense of critical race theory, right? Stop the whitewashing of U.S. history and banning critical race theory. There we go, right? They're fighting to get, the 1619 project in your history class, right? And go ahead.
Oh, an important point needs to be made here, because the liberal talking point is that critical race theory is just teaching about the history of racism in America. And that's not what critical race theory is. If you've studied critical race theory in college, you know that it's saying that race is the primary contradiction. And if anyone who says class could be just as important, gender could be just as important, they are immediately rejecting critical race theory. So we have to distinguish between, liberals are being, the subcommunication that's given to liberals is that critical race theory is when you teach that slavery happened and it was bad, and that restricting critical race theory would cause denial of that. And that's not what's going on. Now, I'm not saying the government should ban critical race theory. I think that's kind of a dumb idea in terms of micromanaging classrooms, but we need to be clear on our terms.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, there is an anti-racist literature like W.E.B. Du Bois and others that leads to a class struggle narrative. Critical race theory is not that, right? Critical race theory, the New York Times did this whole series about the entire purpose of the American Revolution was just racism, just to preserve slavery. And that's not factually accurate. And many historians looked at that and said that's just not true. But that's what critical race theory teaches, right? And that the labor movement was just inherently racist. It was to help white workers oppress black workers. That's, again, the labor movement was strongest when it took up the rights of black people. And that critical race theory is a very, very, it's privileged politics. It's this kind of woke narrative that is against what the strongest and most important leaders of the black movement, including the Black Panthers, who were Marxists, promoted, right? And it's not a black nationalist narrative either. It's this academic thing that was thought up by the Ford Foundation and other institutions. And so then the other thing that I do want to say about PSL and what makes PSL so dangerous, right, is, so I was in a Marciite group for a long time, right? And the Marciites, they take this line that goes back to the 1930s and the 1960s, which is the right of, that you have the right to armed self-defense against fascism, right? Which made sense at that time. And it still is correct, right? If black people are being threatened by the Klan, they have the right to fight back, right? If labor unions are being threatened by anti-labor fascists who want to attack their picket line, they have the right to fight back, right? So the actual Marciite line of the right to defend yourself against fascism, and that any violence against fascists, right, is somehow self-defense, that makes sense. But PSL thinks that anybody who is not a woke liberal is a fascist, right? And they don't tell you that, right? But if you look at any of their social media or you listen to any of their rhetoric, go and listen, go and watch the video of any PSL pro-abortion rally. Everyone who opposes abortion is a fascist. So according to PSL, it's okay to kill anybody who's against abortion, right? If you listen to PSL, right, anybody who voted for Donald Trump is a fascist. So you can kill anybody who votes for Donald Trump. They've taken what made sense in the context of fighting the Klan and fighting Nazis, and they've taken it and applied it to anybody who is a conservative, right? And they basically advocate violently annihilating half of the United States. And they won't admit that. And if you confront them on that, say, well, that's not what we mean, but it is what you mean, because the second, and look at Twitter, anytime a PSL person disagrees with you on anything, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist. And that is them saying, we think it's okay for you to be killed, right? And so PSL basically wants to exterminate half of America, right? And they just need to come out and say they don't believe that, all right? They could just come out and say, no, we don't think all Trump supporters are fascists, but they'll never do that. Just come out and say you don't think all anti-abortion people are fascists. They'll never do that, right? So, and then they say they're not for Kamala Harris. They're not for Kamala Harris. Well, if you want to kill every Trump supporter because they're an evil fascist, how are you not then for Kamala Harris, right? If you want to kill every anti-abortion person, how are you not for Kamala Harris? And then that then raises a question. They're leading the Palestine rallies. Do you think all the Arab Muslims that are marching there support abortion? You know what I'm saying? Like, so do they want to kill Muslims that are? So how does this work? You're a fascist if you're against abortion, if you're white, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
pretty much. And it's
nuts.
They've made a career. I mean, they're moving away from it, but PSL has made a career of defending countries that are generally less liberal than they are.
Yeah, and no, they used to understand, I mean, again, it was understood that, like, black nationalists are against abortion, black nationalists are against gay marriage and all that there was a time where they understood that, but they are so desperate to rally liberals, right? That's what, at the end of the day, they say that they're against both Kamala and Joe Biden. But in reality, their election campaign is a recruiting drive to recruit a counter gang for Joe Biden. They want to be Joe Biden's protest squad, right? They are organizing the mobs of people that go out in the streets and fight Trump, right? That's what they're doing. And their campaign is just a recruiting drive to build these kind of woke hate mobs, and so they can say they're against the Democrats, but they want all out war to defend critical race theory, all out war to defend abortion, all out, and then they want to cut the power grid, and I mean,
and I want to speak briefly to any Answer or PSL members or supporters in the audience. We're not attacking you personally, and it is a difficult question American anti-imperialists have always faced. How do we make ourselves how do we not get crushed by the state apparatus? How do we maneuver in a way that we make friends and don't make everyone our enemies? Because you do need some allies. So would you maybe say something about that?
Yeah, well, I guess this is why Peter Coffin's upcoming film, it's going to come out, in a few days, is really important. And I'm really excited. We're going to premiere it on this channel and stuff. And it's really, really important because we are not left or right? We are for socialism, right? We're for a planned economy, and we're against degrowth. And that it might have made sense in the past that the left was more friendly to socialist countries. The left was more pro-labor, but now the left is pushing degrowth and the left is more for war. And now we really should have no loyalty to the left. And that the way PSL exists is that they are a counter gang for the left, right? They are the Democrats' mob. And that's why you shouldn't vote for them, because they're keeping socialism attached to the more dangerous wing of the ruling class, which is the degrowth wing, which is the pro-war wing. That is the more dangerous wing, the people that are pushing us into World War III and the people that are pushing a low-wage police state. And that's why you shouldn't vote for them ultimately, is because they are trying to keep socialism and anti-imperialism attached to the more dangerous wing. That is really the crux of my argument. What do you think?
Yeah. Should we
before you go, I want to, because you probably know more than anybody, and then we'll bring Phil back on because it looks like Phil figured things out, and then Phil will come on after you. So hang on, Phil. We hear you. Phil will come on after you. But I was asked about Bishop Carril's statement about evolution, and you follow evolution, right? More than anybody. Was it? Yeah. What do you thought on Patriarch Kirill's statement on evolution? Any thoughts? I didn't see what did Patriarch Kirill of the Russian Orthodox Church say about evolution? What do you think about it?
Yeah, so the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church, who most people in the chat will know, but for the few who don't, is the Eastern Orthodox equivalent of the Pope, or the Russian Orthodox equivalent of the Pope, recently made a statement in response to some Russian local considering banning teaching of evolution. He made a statement to the effect of, it's okay or it's compatible to teach both evolution and Christianity. And I didn't read actually his full statement. I read a couple of quotes from it and a summary from it. So I wouldn't be the expert on Russian Orthodoxy, although I had studied it. I think that, I obviously, I heavily disagree with the idea that evolution can be reconciled with Christianity. I've tried to make it work myself, and it really doesn't. And I also think that just on science alone, evolution is very flimsy. But that's a whole nother topic. I will say this: I think that there are anti-imperialists who are creationists, and there are anti-imperialists who are evolutionists, and so it doesn't somebody can be either one and still be anti-imperialist for sure. I do think that we need to be careful of trying to please the majority or please the academy in any scenario, and how much that affects what we say and even what we think. And I know for a fact many Christians, because I know them personally, are kind of scared to take a stand for creation, or because they might be scientifically embarrassed by it. But it's not because of the evidence that they go along with evolution. It's because of peer pressure. And on either side, I wouldn't want anybody to feel like they have to be pressured in some way. And I mean, there's a huge cancel culture surrounding this issue where, maybe not huge, but significant, where sometimes, speakers will get canceled from universities because they are creationist, or what sometimes even happens in scientific journals is that a paper unrelated to the origins issue will get submitted, it gets approved, it passes the peer review process, and then someone says, wait, stop the presses. I think one of the authors might be a creationist. And so because some scientist in their personal life is creationist, the paper gets shut down, even though sometimes it wasn't even on that issue. That's happened before, multiple times. Jerry Bergman has written a lot on this issue. Traditionally, orthodoxy has taught creation rather than evolution, but there are always going to be people within every denomination who are more believing in evolution. And I'm trying to see how I can tie this into orthodoxy more. I will say this, that the same people pretty consistently who are taking the churches in a pro-war, pro-imperialist direction are aggressively promoting evolution and fighting creation. And I want to caution people that you may think you're only bringing one thing into the church, and you may accidentally be bringing another. That would be my contribution to the conversation. You can go ahead, Caleb. Patriarch Kirill. And
well, I mean, as somebody who doesn't know much about it, I do know that there is, a Marxist critique of, I guess there's that whole thing with the guy in, what was his name now? It's escaping me. The Soviet scientist who had a criticism. He was like critical of Darwinian evolution, and he was talking about Lamarckian evolution.
Yeah, Trofim Lysenko.
Lysenko, yes. Yeah. And there's a whole thing about that. And that now people are talking about epigenetics. And epigenetics is something that Darwinian evolution doesn't recognize, right? Darwin said you cannot pass on acquired traits, right? And that epigenetics does, fly in the face of Darwin. And that Darwinism, Darwin himself, right? He projected a lot onto his own theories. There's a lot of things that his theories didn't say that he immediately jumped on, and phrases like survival of the fittest. Biologists say that it doesn't mean what Darwin meant it to mean, right? And the concept of the descent of man, right? There's nothing in Darwin's theories that says, oh, humans are like the pinnacle, the high achievement, right? And that he projected a lot of very British ideas at the time. It's the supreme ones that live and the inferior ones that die. That's actually not what, modern biologists who even accept Darwinism say, right? They say, what does fit actually mean? Fit doesn't mean you're the best. It just means you have the genes that enable you to survive when others don't. Right. And they also say there's no, like, that image we see of like the monkey turning into a person, like that's, that's not, modern biologists say, no, there's no like plan, that like leads to like the most advanced species is the man. Like there's nothing in Darwinian evolution that says we're any separate than animals, right? And that there's no direction, there's no like, advance, there's no progress,
and this gets into one of the conflicts between like evolution and religion, is because most scientists, of the ones who believe in evolution, define it explicitly as an unguided process of natural selection and mutations. And so once you say God guided it, you're already disagreeing with most scientists. And so it's like scientists are not impressed when you say, look, you can be a Christian and believe in evolution. It's like saying, look, you can be a Marxist and be against Cuba and China. It doesn't impress anybody. That's I know that's a little bit of a tangent, but yes, one of the points you're making that's true is that there are, of people who are totally secular and believe life arose naturally, there are several different modern competing theories. There's not only the neo-Darwinist kind, there's other kinds as well. So that's important to recognize. Go on, continue with what you were saying.
Well, no, that's the only point that I was making. And that because even, Darwin wasn't himself as guilty as some of his successors, but almost immediately people started using Darwinism to promote, racism and the superiority of some races, eugenics, the free market, because the richest people are just the most fit, and that it immediately attached itself to a British imperialist agenda, right? Just immediately, because of that, and that Darwin's work was tainted by that. And modern biologists will admit that. They'll say, yeah, what we believe and what Darwin said don't exactly line up, because Darwin was a British colonial agent. I mean, he was, right? And that, whatever truth he discovered, even that's accepted by modern biologists, they admit he tainted his own social agenda onto it.
Yeah. Certain writers have, shout out again to Jerry Bergman, who has written a lot about how Darwin was a social Darwinist. And as you said, some of his followers and people after him were even much worse on that point. But, goodness, what was the other point you were making about?
Just that basically. So.
Oh yeah, that the descent of man. I mean, Origin of Species is it's long, but it makes his points. It's all right. The Descent of Man is really racist in some parts. That's where you get some of the issues. I think that. Oh man, I feel like I had a point to make, and now I'm forgetting it. Honestly.
Okay. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing you in Chicago. I know you're coming, so that'll be cool. And
that should be good. Hopefully.
Yeah, and folks will get to meet Gavin if they come, so you get to hang out and pick his brain on Darwinism and creationism. So that'll be fun. So Phil's going to be there also. I'm bringing him on after you, so it's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah, let's hear from Phil.
Yeah. So go register, folks. It's going to be fun. So shout out to Gavin. You look like you're in your college dorm room. Is that the case?
I am. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Well, best wishes to you. Daniel Ward says thank you for answering his question. All right.
Daniel, I'll put a link for you in the comments specifically about orthodoxy and creation evolution. I'll see you there.
All right. Look for his link, Daniel. All right. Now I'll bring on Phil. Phil.
Hey, how you doing, Caleb? Sorry about that.
I'm great. Thank you for being with us yesterday and helping us put the banner together and passing out things at the rally and being on the bullhorn. And I am really excited for the video that Peter is editing together. I sent him all kinds of video, and thanks for being there. Did you have a good time?
Yes, I did. It was an honor and a pleasure coming out there with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, it was great to have you there, and I'm looking forward to you joining us in Chicago. That's going to be fun too.
Yeah, great food, great people, great conversation. I can't wait to hear your speech, that you're going to be given. It's going to be a great time. If you haven't registered yet, register. Come on out to Chicago. It's a great group of people. I was in Chicago with them for the DNC, and every single one of them treated me like family, so. And just to say, special shout out to the Chicago team. being so nice to me when I was there.
Good. Yeah, no, it was great. People saw you there, and there is a video of you somewhere I found online. I could not find it again of you passing out Kamala Harris books at the DNC. So, yeah. So I guess anything that stuck with you from yesterday's outreach?
Yeah, like I said, it was a great group of people, but we were able to hand out quite a few of the CPI palm cards. You were able to speak with at least one of the people, walking by. We were in front of Trump Tower. The banner, when I saw it unfurl, it was absolutely gorgeous. And then the other thing was, the food, going to Olive Garden afterwards.
Oh yeah,
So
well, that was fun too.
Yeah, it's not all just work. You get to have a little bit of fun afterwards. So.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's comradely bonding, right? Get to spend some time with folks. So, well, very good. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Chicago, and I'm looking forward to everything. So keep us in the loop. Thank you, Phil. Thanks.
Just really quick, if I may, how did the wife take it when you came home with the stuff?
Well, she was very happy when I took it to the storage locker this morning. So had the big banner and the big poles. She was not thrilled when I brought it in, and it was actually quite a challenge to get it into my apartment because those 10-foot poles, they barely fit in the elevator. And then as I was coming out of the elevator, they got caught in between the elevator and the building, right, in that like hole. And so pulling them out of the hole while they're trying to move the 10-foot poles, oh my goodness. But now they're safe in the storage locker, and so they're good to go. And I'm hoping that you and I could get out there, hopefully with some other people again soon, and do it.
Definitely.
We're working on the whole campaign. Don't want to say too much, but we're working on the whole campaign, and that should be out in the next couple of days. And I think a lot of people really appreciate what we did out there, and they've only seen the tip of the iceberg. So I'm looking forward to that. So thank you for your hard work. It's been great. And shout out to not just Phil, but Briggy, Irving, and Noah. It was a great day. Great day all around, I would say.
It was, even though there were some hiccups, but
there was a lot of moving parts. I was not sure we'd be able to pull it off between the polls and the banners and the going to Central Park and putting it together and video and the speaker. Everything worked out. You know what I mean? I was sure they were going to shut us down with the microphone, but they didn't. Right? We had the bullhorn the whole time. They didn't shut us down.
We had it the whole time. I think it was because it was in front of Trump Tower. And we weren't like protesting, against Trump, we actually saw, a convoy of what I thought was Secret Service, probably with some of Trump's family in it. That was kind of exciting, and it was a great day. Are you going to make a spoof video of the stuff that happened in Central Park?
Yes, that's what Peter's working on. So yeah, you'll see. Yeah, he's editing the whole day together. So and we'll put that out there when we formally launch the campaign. So Peter's going to do a great job. He's very skilled with the video editing. He's adjusting the color and doing all kinds of behind the scenes work. So he's very skilled.
And it was Peter that actually made the banner, right?
Yes, Peter designed the banner.
Shout out to Peter. Thank you, man.
Yeah, well, you'll get to meet Peter in Chicago, right? He's coming to the workshop. He's giving a workshop on why we're not building a fandom. We're building a movement, not a fandom. So that's his class he's giving. So that'll be right after lunch at the workshop. So all right.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Caleb.
Sure thing. Talk to you soon, Phil. All right, cool. All right, very good. Always good to talk to Phil. He's great. All right, what's up?
Nothing, Mr. Maupin. I was just coming on to ask you a bit about what you heard or saw about the Sean Combs allegations and how that was similarly connected to what people were saying about Epstein a few years back. Like people
Go ahead.
I mean, so basically, the allegation is this music mogul, Sean Combs, aka Diddy, was having adults only events. This is, I mean, this is a PG-13 channel, I assume, so I'd rather not.
Yeah, I've heard some of the stuff. I'm sure people have heard some of the things that this individual was accused of doing. I mean, I saw the allegations, and I actually have Whitney Webb's book, One Nation Under Blackmail. I have the book, and I'm started reading it. And it just seems like sexual blackmail is such a big part of how the deep state operates, and it makes you wonder, to some degree or other, if almost everybody within the power structure, they've got some kind of blackmail on. Unanimous, you seem to have frozen on us. Are you still there? Are you still there? Okay. Well, we seem to have lost our guest, but it makes me wonder if they seem to have blackmail on everybody these days, practically, because there's just been so many revelations, and it seems like what Jeffrey Epstein was doing was, oh, here he is. What's up?
Sorry, man, I dealt my mother with something real quick.
Okay. But yeah, but it just makes me wonder how, I mean, it seems like indulging people's extreme or bizarre sexual fantasies, and then using that as leverage over them seems to be a big part of how the deep state is operating in our time. Would you say that that's what, seems to be the case?
And, there was another interesting dialogue around it, where the idea is government agencies, specifically the DOC, the Department of Corrections, used gangster rap culture as a means of promoting mass incarceration. And it's interesting to me because around the time, do you know what the SoundCloud rap was?
Well, that was a thing. Like SoundCloud rappers were a thing, right?
Yeah,
2 or 3 years
in my
ago.
view, it's kind of interesting that whole thing became associated with the use of prescription pills, codeine, Percocets, MDMA. Because that, in my view, was something that could, in my view, it was a way to threaten the music industry in a way that that branch had never seen before, at least since the illegal downloading days. It's kind of interesting how, like, it seems like there's this 4D chess game with hip hop. Like, and
yeah,
I wonder,
there's a whole lot on this, right? I know the LaRouche movement, they have a pamphlet called The Racist Roots of Jazz. And they argue that jazz is not really black music. It was promoted by, wealthy people to kind of corrupt the black community. And then, the other... What's that?
And I'm saying, it's kind of, you do got to be careful with that, because there are some mildly anti-Semitic tropes tied in there.
Well, the other thing is that gangster culture, right, is something that is promoted by the imperialists, and it's not good. And I feel like it's gone beyond. It was just hip hop that was promoting it, and now it's very mainstream. Almost every movie you watch is about somebody who gets rich by being ruthless or breaking the rules somehow, and then they fuck up their enemy. And that what we used to associate with rap has become pretty mainstream, and that we're a society. Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting that it used to be those films used to end terribly. I mean, Tony Montana ends up in a puddle of his own blood. Walter White ends up in a puddle of his own blood. But then you get to Wolf of Wall Street, and it's like, what did he get? I know that's a real story, but it couldn't have.
Right, right. But it's still the same kind of theme, right? It's like you get ruthless, get rich or die trying, and fight your opponents, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, and I just feel like so many movies that's become
everybody got to make it to the top or their ass get popped.
Right, and then I've also heard that was associated with the fall of the Soviet Union. At the time the Soviet Union fell, gangster culture was very popular among the youth in the country who were becoming anti-communist or just pessimistic. That there was, there was a lot of, that at the time of the fall of the Soviet Union, the young guys all wanted to be gangsters, and that there was like, that was part of the fall of the Soviet Union too. And it's just part of a culture deteriorating is when that kind of becomes people's values. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say so too. And it especially is if he too is kind of, to me, I don't think like this is going to make people more violent, but I do think it desensitizes people to committing acts of violence. Like, I think a few years back it came out that Call of Duty was an active tool used by military recruiters.
Right.
And that to me is interesting. You kill someone in a video game, if King Von freaking spins the block, what's the difference between that and killing an Iranian soldier?
Yeah,
But then
well,
again,
and
here's the question.
the way they use the drones is kind of like that. You know what I mean? I mean, the
Yeah.
drone, I mean, it is, they say it's like a video game.
Yeah, and then there's a weird. I wonder how much this is going to backfire on them because military recruitment, at least among young men who, the culture is being pushed on, it's going down. And it's not just men; it's primarily men, but it's most. But yeah,
Well, there you go.
like the idea of the gangster rapper, like gangster rappers take their shirts off a lot, like to show, oh, their feathers, the big muscles. And like that's very machismo, that whole aesthetic. And it's like being a man, being a soldier, killing people. That is promoted to men, but military recruitment in men is going down.
Okay,
And
well,
to me, I'm
Gavin,
wondering like if people would be desensitized to reports about war crimes or terrorism. Like if
Yeah.
that's gonna just backfire on them.
Okay, well, Gavin says, have you read Professor Griff's book, which is the titled Covert Psychological War on Hip Hop?
I have not, but I have heard of similar articles.
And the other thing is the standard leftist narrative. I'm just telling you this, not that I stand by it. I'm very critical of the standard left, as you know. The standard leftist narrative that you get from communist groups is that hip hop started as revolutionary black music and it was co-opted by the music industry that made it cheap. And they talk about Public Enemy and they talk about Tupac and they talk about it was this revolutionary black music that then was co-opted by the big record companies.
Chuck D works for the State Department now.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and he was part of Public. Yeah.
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 And
So
it's kind of interesting how like Diddy did tie into all this. I mean, people credit him with bringing in the bling era, which is when the lines between gangster rap being weird, gritty, almost pulpy dramas about life in the ghetto to basically showing off being prominent. And then
the other thing
that's
people
kind
have
of
pointed out is that Trump is a hip hop icon and that doesn't fit, right? That Trump's name is in more hip hop songs than like any other president, right? And that before he was
I
president.
think it was mostly because Trump kind of does represent, like there is, like interestingly enough, there is kind of that lower level capitalist cowboy. Hip hop is very American, I'll say that.
Yeah.
Like
it is.
if you listen to like freaking like, and that's kind of why like the gangster genre is popular in America. Like I'll be honest, some dude made a commentary on how gangster movies are kind of weirdly commentaries on the American dream. And it gets funnier when you realize that Oliver Stone has a writing credit on Scarface. I'll just say that.
And the other thing is that organized crime is often very boring. What organized crime actually does is often really, really boring. The more you read into it, most of what organized crime does is they get around regulations that exist of businesses in urban centers, right? In New York City, everybody knows in New York City that a lot of restaurants are involved in organized crime because the regulations about where you buy the food and all that are really, really strict. And so, certain people have back channels and all that to get around them. Another thing is in New York State, the price of cigarettes is like doubled because of taxes. And one of the main organized crime things they're always busting people for is people drive to other states, fill their car with cigarettes, and they drive back to New York and they make the profit, right? When and that that a lot of what organized crime does is really not some really exciting,
Scarface fantasy.
yeah, it's just there's some really dumb tax or regulation that's been imposed by the government that hurts small businesses. So people have an in with somebody who bribes a cop or bribes an inspector, or they have some loophole where they can get around that law, and they make lots of money doing it, right? They use this law, and that probably, I mean, if you wanted it to go away, just get rid of those laws, and then those people are all legal, and then whatever. But yeah, that organized crime is actually quite boring.
Never thought about it like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I only once ever got called for jury duty in Brooklyn, New York, and the case, I laugh about it now because it was so obviously something, right? And I was quite worried because I was thinking I could never do a criminal case because I would never want to be involved in convicting somebody, but I guess it ended up it was a civil case, and so I was there, and they had us all in the room, and they were going to narrow down the jury to so many people. And so the lawyers explained what the case was about. And the two lawyers worked for the same law firm. And they first said, oh, we work for the same law firm and we're good friends. So if you see us laughing and joking, that doesn't mean there's any collusion going on. We're just good friends. We work at the same law firm. That was the first thing. They both had like Italian last names. And they said, this case is about, a father who has run over his son's foot, right, in a parking garage. And he ran over his son's foot. And so then this other woman who's going to be on the jury, she raises her hand and she's like, this sounds like a family dispute that doesn't belong in court. And the lawyer said, well, I think I speak for both of us when I'm making clear that there is no family dispute. The father and the son are really good friends. This is about the insurance payout. This is about the insurance payout. And
Sounds
I'm
boring.
sitting there. Yeah. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, this is so obviously some kind of mafia scam. You know what I mean? I'm sitting there. I mean, it's like, it doesn't take a genius to tell what's going on here. You work for the same law firm. The father ran over his son's foot, but they're not fighting with each other. They're good friends. This is just about the insurance. I'm like, how stupid do you think I am? So then, they removed me from the jury because one of the questions on our form was, have you ever worked in the insurance industry? And I said, yes. And they said, you're out. So, that was that. And it's like a lot of what organized crime does in our time is really, it's not, it's boring. You know what I'm saying? It's and so that's one thing, that they talk about.
What?
Did you see, speaking of organized crime, they just busted the Peckerwoods. Did you see that? 68 Peckerwoods have been indicted. Did you see that? Why are you laughing? The name? That's the name of the gang. It's in California. It's called Peckerwoods, right? It's a gang in California.
What is it like a gang of homosexual extortionists?
Well, apparently Peckerwood was a slur for a white person, like in the 1920s, right? It was used by black people in prisons. So white gangs have called themselves Peckerwoods. And so a gang in California called the Peckerwoods they indicted 68 of them, and they deal heroin. Allegedly they deal heroin, and but they're a white supremacist skinhead gang based in California called Peckerwoods, and 68 of them were just indicted by the federal government. So I saw that in the news, and I thought, that's weird. And why now? And that makes me wonder, like, I know, different sections of the deep state have relationships with different gangs. And it makes me wonder if they're a pro-Trump, like, you know what I'm saying? Because of the whole white supremacy thing.
That is an interesting thing, because at the end of the day, what did Diddy do to make these people mad at him?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, too, because I feel like the Diddy thing, like the Epstein thing, points to the fact, I think they have this kind of blackmail on a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? That's what I think Whitney Webb is pointing to in her book, One Nation Under Blackmail. Is that it's like they almost promote people who they have blackmail on because they can control them, right? And that and so what did
and you talked a bit about how they push people's psychological buttons,
right? And it seems like in order for P. Diddy to have done what he did, he had to have not been well on some level, right? I mean, the kind of things that he did.
They talk about how he saw his father murdered in front of him by Frank Lucas.
Okay, that's some trauma.
And Frank Lucas. If I'm going to be honest, I'm 90% sure like 80% sure Frank Lucas was a CIA op.
Okay, I don't know anything about that. Who was his father? Who was PD's
some weird,
father?
some C-list gangster in Harlem, I think. I heard.
Okay, and he was killed by another organized crime guy named Frank Lewis.
Frank Lucas, yes, or like one
Interesting.
of his associates. Like I heard about it from some coworker.
Right.
So basically, small story about Frank Lucas. He was known for smuggling heroin from Asia to the U.S. On military planes. And the only person, there was like only one person who was indicted with him, and it was like a family member of his. And that to me is like, okay. Like that's a weird sidebar, but it's like anyone who's gotten anything on that, you know, send me, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hank Greenspun. I talk about him. You look at who Hank Greenspun was, right? He owned the newspaper in Nevada, right? He was just a newspaper owner in Nevada, but he stole millions of dollars worth of military hardware from the U.S. government, just millions and millions of dollars, and he was only given like a fine, and then Kennedy pardoned him. And you look it up, Hank Greenspun. I mean, this guy was, I mean, he stole, it was clearly some kind of intelligence operation, Hank Greenspun. And he was a Mossad agent, basically, who stole, he was the publisher of the Las Vegas Sun. And this guy was a gangster, and he was tied in with the Mossad, and he was also a gangster. And he stole, you know,
Sorry,
Hank
man,
Greenspun.
I'm unfamiliar with this program.
Yeah, I mean, Hank Greenspun, but he's also the guy who revealed that Joe McCarthy was gay, right? He outed Joe McCarthy for being gay, right? His name was Hank Greenspun, and he was
So
he's
you're
a
saying they
newspaper.
push McCarthy's buttons the same way they did Obama?
Yeah, he's the guy who revealed that Joe McCarthy was gay, and then Joe McCarthy married his secretary the next day to like prove he wasn't gay. But then the FBI also later had files saying that Joe McCarthy was not just gay, but he was a rapist, and he raped younger men. Actually, he would get younger men drunk and then take them to his hotel room and rape them. You know, and that was like a thing that Joe McCarthy did, even going back to his army days. He was a gay rapist, and that you know, that Hank Greenspun revealed that in the Las Vegas Sun. And then it turns out Hank Greenspun all throughout the 1950s was going to U.S. Army bases, taking their military equipment and sending it to Israel. And he got caught for doing this and got no penalty for it, and then got a presidential pardon from John F. Kennedy. So the whole thing is, it's like it shows the collusion of Israeli intelligence and organized crime. But it also shows that to some degree or other, they found Joe McCarthy to be a threat, right? Joe McCarthy, you know, was anti-communist, but he was tied in with like the Roman Catholic urban political machines that are, you know, that there's a history of like anti-Semitism. They think about like Jewish communists or whatever, you know. And so the Israel kind of thought Joe McCarthy was a threat. And that a lot of the McCarthyists also thought that that Israel was communist because it was, you know, it was a Jewish country and it had a big socialist party and stuff like that. And so it appears that McCarthyism may have been considered a threat to Zionism, and that's why, you know, people turned against it. It's all very interesting.
Some Jewish agents fucking with the U.S. They think he's a communist. Able to go down slightly easily in the 60s.
Now, there you go. All right. Well, good to talk to you. Yeah, I got a few more super chats, so we'll talk again sometime, I'm sure. All righty. So, please send the clip of Scott Ritter. I believe it was a CPI event where he described the murder of 6-year-old Hind. Well, I will show some of the video of Scott Ritter speaking at our recent convention. I will show that. You know, Scott Ritter has spoken at a couple CPI events at this point. But this was when he spoke at our event in December. And it was, you know, this was the aftermath of October 7th. You know, there was a clip from the event that went viral, you know, that like exploded onto social media, you know, of him talking about Hamas, that went crazy. And we're proud to work with Scott. Scott is our friend. And, you know, we hate to see him raided by the FBI. And, you know, I stand by anyone who's under attack. So yeah, this was Scott.
Knows everybody. Media just repeats the lies while every minute or so. And try to stop the slaughter as the facts on the ground are more dire by the second if we look into the future. How will this be reckoned? We ask each other in the streets, marching side by side around the world, people shouting, stop the genocide. All of those who wondered, what could I have done? The last time there was such a Holocaust as this one are faced with the dilemma that's bursting at the seam. How to stop the madness of this Israeli regime? How to stop the killing before everybody dies? While there are any parents left to hear the cries of their children in the rubble just before they died. Around the world, people shouting, stop the genocide.
Hell yeah.
Wow. So now I have the honor of bringing to the podium a military analyst, a former UN weapons inspector, a great hero, an advocate of peace, someone who's been exposing the truth and telling so many people what they need to hear about what's been happening lately in Gaza, but also about what's been happening with Russia and China, and a voice that needs to be heard. We've got Scott Ritter here, and we're honored to have Scott Ritter. Scott.
Thank you very much. Say what? Thank you very much for the warm welcome. Wow, that's all I can say about that. And the fact that you used my name in association with that song is touching. I want to thank Jetta for introducing us, Elizabeth, Caleb, all of CPI. I have learned that you are not the Communist Party International. Or India. But, again, here I am in a situation where I liken it to once more into the breach. Because we are not alike in terms of our approaches towards society. We come from different backgrounds. Let me just put it that way. And yet here I am, speaking with you again. Why? Because of what you said. Because we are Americans. That's what unites us. That's what brings us together. Now, I'm a little upset with you because you took the theme of my speech. Something about I'm mad as shit. We're not gonna let this shit happen anymore. I thought long and hard about this speech. And now you've blown it, so I've got to make it up as I go along. But that's okay. No, in all seriousness, this is supposed to be about anti-war, an anti-war movement. I am not anti-war. I just want to make that point as loud and clear as I can. I'm not pro-war. I don't support war. I'm against war. But if you want to wage war, there ain't nobody better at it than me. Okay? I know how to wage war. That's why I hate war. I despise war. But if you want to fight, let's fight. And the reason why I bring this up is we are confronted with some problems today. For instance, let's take Russia and Ukraine. It's a war I think we can all agree we want to end. No, we don't want it to end. Because if it ends today, right now, there is no justice. There is no justice for the children of Donbass. There's no justice for the Russians who have been oppressed by the fascist regime in Kiev. No, there needs to be a war. This thing has to be settled. Once you cross the threshold, once you cross the line of departure, then you must close with and destroy the enemy through firepower maneuver. Now, that's difficult for an anti-war movement to understand. But Russia didn't start this war. What we know is that Russia did everything possible to prevent this war. Everything possible. And the reason why I'm yelling is because I'm mad. I'm mad at my country for not allowing the opportunities for peace to manifest themselves. Hundreds of thousands of people would be alive today had we simply taken the hand that was reached out in the cause of peace. But we rejected it. We rejected it. We lied while rejecting it. We claimed to be for peace, but we were never for peace. We were always for war. And so war has come to us. And through war, tragically, this process will be solved. Now, people say, Scott, you're an American. Yes, I am. Damn proud to be an American. You attack my country, I will kill you or die trying. So don't attack America. But when we're talking about Russia and Ukraine, we're not talking about somebody attacking America. We're talking about America facilitating the attack on another country. America manipulating events. America overthrowing a constitutionally elected government in Ukraine. America using an ostensible peace process as a vehicle to arm, train, and equip a military force for the sole purpose of killing Russians. We bragged about it. There's a slide that the U.S. Army put out about the training facilities in Western Ukraine. We train a battalion, they said, every 55 days. A battalion of Ukrainians to NATO standards every 55 days here on the map, and then an arrow so they can go here and kill Russians. Wow. At least we were honest for the first time in our lives, because that's what Minsk was about. The Minsk Accords were supposed to be a ceasefire agreement that could lead to peace. Peace that would have preserved the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Preserved it. Would have given Ukraine security guarantees, but not through NATO, because NATO is not about security. NATO is about the opposite of security. NATO is an extension of imperialist American objectives using a foreign flag as cover. That's all it's about. And yet we pretended it was about peace. And we allowed Angela Merkel to front for us. We allowed Francois Hollande to front for us. We allowed Ukrainian presidents to front for us. But what were they fronting for? They admitted today, a sham. It wasn't about peace, it was about buying time so that NATO could train this Ukrainian army to kill Russians. And Russia said, hell no. Just like we did. Study our history. The British taxation without representation, the tyranny of the crown, and we said, hell no. And we stood up and we fought a revolution to free ourselves. What would the anti-war movement have done in 1775? Fold? Hold a demonstration? No, you had to stand with the Minutemen at Concord and Lexington and say, you shall not pass. And so the Russians have said the same thing. We will not allow this fascist tyranny. It's not just Ukraine, it's a collective West using the cause of fascism. My God, my uncle went across the beach at Normandy in 1944 to fight the Nazis. I told this story before, where he finally made it to, they fought through France. It was sort of a walk in the park. And he got to a field in Belgium, and the 88s opened up. And in a matter of seconds, 250 of his colleagues, men that he had trained with, men he knew, were dead on the ground. And when he visited us, my parents lived in Germany, we visited us, we took him to the cemetery where these men were buried. And he broke down and he cried like a baby because of the sacrifice, the loss that was put into the cause of defeating fascism, Nazi Germany. Americans died for that cause. 27 million Soviets died for that cause. British died for that cause. French died for that cause. And yet today we are promoting the very cause that these people died and sacrificed their lives for. Why? Why? It's not about freedom. It's not about liberty. It's about imperialism. It's about the very thing that America struggled to free ourselves from so many years ago. We're now seeking to impose it on the rest of the world. We stopped being the good guys and we have become the bad guys.
Yep. That's right.
This is bullshit. I want to use your line again. We're not going to put up with this shit anymore.
We're not going to put up with this shit anymore.
But how do we solve this problem? That's the problem. That's where we're at. And I thank you for bringing music into this, because I don't know, there's people out there that say that they listen to me and they follow me. I've been on a couple of shows, a guy named Malcolm Byrne. He does a wonderful radio show out of Radio Kingston. And we have a couple hours worth of conversation, but we interspace it with music. And music is a very important part of lives. I mean, music allows people to express themselves. And I don't know about you guys, but I've been around for 62 years. And so when I look back on my life, it's usually in the form of a soundtrack. I mean, I pick a moment in my life and I'm like, oh yeah, that Bruce Springsteen song was pretty cool back then. Or yeah, Boz Scaggs. I know I'm giving my age away, but the Eagles, the Bee Gees. But the point is, music is a big thing. So as I was flying over and trying to think, what am I going to say here? A song came to mind, and it's a Bruce Springsteen song. But you know, the lyrics, I think, are pretty telling. Near the end of the song, the singer talks about a guy. He says, and Tom said, the Tom I'll get to in a minute. Ma, wherever there's a cop beating a guy, wherever a hungry newborn baby cries. I tear up because 5,000 kids getting killed in Gaza right now, and more to die because it's never going to end. Shameful. If you don't cry about that, you're not human. Wherever a hungry newborn baby cries, where there's a fight against the blood and hatred in the air, look at me, Ma, and I'll be there. I'm here with you guys because this is what it's about. This isn't about ideology or this is about people coming together. The song is about Tom Joad, a character in John Steinbeck's wonderful book, The Grapes of Wrath. And the thing about Tom Joad is that there's a transformation that takes place through his telling the story in the Great Depression, where he stops being this self-centered, seize the day kind of guy, and instead he becomes a fighter for the people, a fighter for the cause. And that's what we have to become. The hell with the peace movement. And I don't mean that bad, but we have to be fighters. Okay, we can't be pacifists anymore. It's time to struggle. And I'm not talking about violence. I am not talking about violence. Violence is what the Russians do and the Ukrainians do. That's their fight, not our fight. Yeah. Unfortunately, the United States promoted conflict. Live by the sword, you shall perish by the sword. And those whom we sent to war are now paying the ultimate price. And it is tragic, but once this process of cleansing by fire has started, it can't stop until it's finished. So let the Russians finish the job. Because we know the Russians' intent is pure. They didn't want this war. They didn't ask for this war, but war was thrust upon them. And therefore, through war, they shall finish their job. Our job is to be prepared when the fighting stops. How do we ensure that the sacrifice made in the cause of promoting anti-fascism isn't squandered? That we get the Russians on a path towards peace, not just with the Ukrainians, but with the Europeans, with the Americans. That's our responsibility as Americans, to get the United States positioned so that when the fighting stops, we can ensure that it never happens again. That, ladies and gentlemen, is an anti-war movement. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a peace movement. And I've been struggling for this. I've been struggling this for some time. I've been trying to say, well, what can I do? And my whole thing has been to attack Russophobia, the ignorance that comes from the fear of all things Russian. And you're afraid of that which you don't know, that which you don't understand. And so what I've been trying to do is travel to Russia, get some experiences from Russia, package those experiences, and get it out to the American people. I call the process waging peace, as opposed to waging war. I guess in a way that's a anti-war movement, that's a pro-peace movement. So I'm trying to contribute as I can. And I was making progress until October 7th. On October 7th, the world changed yet again. Another war was thrust upon us. And this is a hard one, because as much as we have problems identifying with Russia, in the United States, we don't know how to articulate responsibly about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You see, and I'm going to speak some hard truths here. We, America, have been bought out, sold out to this power called Zionism. We're not allowed to say it, you see. The mere fact that I said this, according to the United States Congress, has made me anti-Semitic. And I always tell people that's the last thing in the world I am. I'm not racist. I'm not anti any religion. I'm not anti any people. Zionism is not a religion. It is not a people. It is an ideology of hate, an ideology of intolerance, an ideology that says that one group of people are inherently superior to all others, especially those who populate the land that the Zionists want to occupy themselves. Zionism is an evil, and it's manifested itself today in the form of an Israeli state that defines itself by this very ideology. Now, I have come to this issue late in life. I'm a disarmament guy. I'm a Russia guy. I'm not an Israeli-Palestinian guy. I spent a lot of time in Israel in the 90s working with the Israeli government trying to stop weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and I learned to love Israel at that time. But the Israel that I fell in love with was the Israel of Yitzhak Rabin, the Israel of a prime minister who recognized that the path Israel was on was incompatible to long-term peace and prosperity, and that there had to be a way of relating with the Palestinians that gave them a state, a two-state solution, something that said, this is yours, this is ours, we will be equals upon this. It wasn't perfect. I know people out there will point to Oslo 1 and Oslo 2 and say it wasn't perfect. No, it wasn't. It's a hell of a lot better than what we got going on right now. At least you had an Israeli prime minister who said, I believe in peace. He didn't just say, I believe in peace. He said, I am willing to die for peace. Imagine that. An Israeli leader who said, I am willing to die for peace. I am willing to die for peace with the Palestinians. He said that the day before he was assassinated on November, I believe, 4th or 5th of 1995. 4th. Who killed him? A Palestinian? A member of Hamas? No. A right-wing Orthodox Jew who took his orders to assassinate from a rabbi who quoted not the Torah but the Talmud and said that Yitzhak Rabin had somehow turned his back on the Jewish faith and therefore he must be killed. And so they killed him. They killed him. And Israel has never been the same because who took over from Yitzhak Rabin was Benjamin Netanyahu. And Benjamin Netanyahu empowered this poisonous ideology to become what Israel is today. Not a nation that's seeking peace, but a nation that only exists for war against the Palestinian people. The Israeli state is an evil state. The Israeli state today is a tyrannical state. It's a state that must be opposed violently because they chose war. It wasn't the Palestinian people that chose war. Israel chose war. Just like it wasn't the Minutemen at Concord and Lexington that said, we choose war. It was thrust upon them by the tyranny of the British Crown. And so when you take a look at October 7th and what happened on October 7th, don't believe that history began that day. It didn't. October 7th was the manifestation of 7+ decades of apartheid-driven hate between the Israelis and the Palestinians that manifested itself violently throughout that time period. Gaza was not a land where Palestinians lived in peace. It was an open-air concentration camp. And if you ask yourself, if you lived in that, if you were an inmate in this concentration camp, a prisoner, what would you do to liberate yourself? What would you do to free yourself? Hold another demonstration? Hold a rally. That'll do it. The Israelis will definitely listen to the rally. No, you do what all people who yearn to be free do. You stand up and you fight for yourselves. You know, Pierce Morgan, you're allowed to boo and hiss at this point, has made a reputation lately by having people on his show, and they'll say, but will you condemn Hamas? That's his question. Will you condemn Hamas? Hey, Pierce, invite me. I'll give you the answer. Hell no. I don't condemn Hamas. I support Hamas. Why? Because Hamas stands for the freedom of the Palestinian people. And the Palestinian people have every right to fight for their freedom, to struggle for their freedom, just like Americans did back in the day. They are the modern day incarnation of the Minutemen at Lexington and Concord. They speak a different language, they support a different cause, but the freedoms they seek are the same. Right. And these are freedoms that can't be granted by a rally or a gathering. They can only be given by those who are willing to sacrifice in that cause. And the Palestinians today are struggling. They are sacrificing for this cause. We as a peace movement, it's not our war. It's not. They have to earn this. And my God, they are earning it. That's right. The sacrifices that they are making, the courage they are showing in the face of insurmountable odds. What is our role here? To support them, yes. But we have to position ourselves so that when the fighting finally ends, and it will end, ladies and gentlemen, and Hamas will not be defeated. When it ends, we are prepared to find a path towards peace. That America stops being the nation that promotes war and starts being the nation that promotes peace. That is the role of an American anti-war movement today. Oh, yeah!
Well, that's Scott Ritter. You can see why the FBI raided his home. You can see why we love him, and we're proud to have him at our events. So thank you, Steph Life. What was the Rust Belt like before it rusted? You know, the 2008 financial crisis happened I was in my second year of college. And, I remember, for example, on my college campus, it was very easy to get a campus job before the financial crisis. So if you wanted to get a campus job, you could very easily get one. There was no competition for them, and the jobs didn't require you to do that much. You just kind of sat someplace and collected minimum wage. After the financial crisis, it became very hard to get a campus job. I went to college in a suburb of Cleveland called Berea. That's where the college I went to was. And one thing I remember is after the financial crisis, we kept seeing homeless people in Berea, in this suburb of Cleveland. There would be people living in tents in the woods. There was a wooded area near the college, and there would be homeless people who'd live in tents in the woods. They would catch homeless people sleeping in the Conservatory of Music, because there were all these little tiny rooms they called practice rooms. So homeless people would sneak in to the Conservatory of Music and sleep there at night because they could sleep there. And there were all kinds of people that were suddenly homeless because of the financial crisis. Another thing that I remember is, when I was a kid, the church in my little town, they never did they lock the door, right? Right? Because, maybe they locked it when no one was there, but they didn't lock it during the church service because they wanted people to come in. But after the financial crisis, there was a problem that, people that were desperate would wait until church services had started in various churches in the town, and then they would sneak in and get into people's purses and stuff like that. So they had to, once the church service started, they locked the door now because of, people are desperate and people live in their cars and people, the difference in the times we live in, right? Between, the economic prosperity that was there in the Midwest when I was a kid and what's here now is quite massive. I was in a little town and there were a lot of kids at my school that were from Appalachia. There were a lot of kids at my school who grew up in trailers. That was, so it wasn't like people were living in luxury. But I think about what the opioid epidemic has done. And, I think about how the little college town I was in, I saw, suddenly you couldn't get a job on campus. Suddenly, suddenly there were homeless people sleeping in the conservatory. The economic devastation of the Rust Belt, what it used to be and what it is now, is quite different. The other thing that people talk about, and this is what is wild, I was born in 1987. So I obviously don't remember this, but people talk about how during the 1970s in America, the 1970s and earlier, the economy was so good that people just kind of screwed around. There was a lot more space to just kind of screw around, right? And that there was a lot more freedom in those days. The penalties were a lot lesser, right? One great example is fighting in school. I got into a fist fight when I was in junior high. I was kicked out of school for a week. A bully was picking on me, and I got into a fist fight with him, and we both got kicked out of school for a week. But, back in the 1970s, people got into fist fights with each other all the time, and nothing happened. The other thing was that, drugs, right? The war on drugs, even though drugs were technically illegal, right? Until the war on drugs got going in the 80s, right? I remember in my little town in Ohio, people used drugs all the time. And people talked about it in the 70s, in the 70s in my little town in Ohio, there was a certain tree people went out to, and people were taking hallucinogens, and people were taking drugs, and, using drugs was normal, and people never got arrested for it. And it was, there was no, it was just something that teenagers did in the 60s and 70s. It was just, that's what the rock bands promoted, and that's what teenagers did, is they took drugs. And then the war on drugs started, and then all of a sudden using drugs was heavily stigmatized. People obviously still did it, but it was a little bit different. And that, one could get into fights, one could, even the penalties for crime, like theft and things like that, were not what they are now. Burglary was much more common, and, and there was a lot more, America was much more Wild West in those days, from what I understand. Part of American culture, I guess, is this kind of like, your house is your business, you do what you want. And that, obviously there's always been, imprisonment in this country, and it's primarily targeted the black community, but there's always been, white people in prison as well. But the prison population didn't really explode until the 90s. It started exploding in the 80s with the war on drugs, but it really blew up in the 90s. And part of that was just that they started locking people up for things they didn't used to lock them up for, right? Again, locking people up for fist fights, right? If I was in a store and somebody cussed me out, or something, I could punch them and get into a fight, and nothing would happen to either of us. Now in New York City, if I'm in a store and somebody calls me something, I get into a fight, the police are going to be called. And if the police can show up, they're going to, somebody's going to jail. And there's a chance, right? If they can convict somebody of assault or something like that, somebody might do a couple months in prison, right? Well, like, that's not how America used to be. People tell me that, that the culture has really, really changed, right? Has really, really changed in a lot of ways. There used to be a lot more violence in everyday life. Kids fighting in school and people fighting other people, workplace fist fights. That used to be common too, right? In a factory, right? Two guys don't like each other. They get into a fight, the boss breaks it up, and they both get told not to do that again. Well, nowadays, if you get into a fist fight on the job, you're fired. But there used to be a lot more tolerance for violence in everyday life. And there used to be a lot more economic security. And there used to be a lot less consequences for things, right? And now there's a lot of, very serious consequences if you break the law. And there's a lot more economic desperation. So yeah, there you go. That's kind of depressing, but that's kind of where we're at. So the other thing that I've seen that's really changed just in the last couple of years is the race issue. The amount of blatant racism that I heard all the time, growing up. And that's one thing that I think that Black Lives Matter has done a great thing. The fact that there is consciousness and awareness and people don't say the shit they used to say, that's good. That's not bad. That's good. Right? We can complain about bad, but that's one thing. The amount of racist shit that I heard. I mean, I told you all the story of, when the pastor told us, in our public school, we had a pastor, and, during study hall, you could go talk to the pastor, and somebody asked why are there different races if Adam and Eve were both white, or if Adam and Eve if we're all descended from Adam and Eve, why are there different races? And our pastor, very easy. And he read us about how, God, Noah's son looked at him naked, so God turned him black. I mean, no one would ever dream of saying something like that nowadays, but people said things like that. And, I don't know, people are a lot more, are a lot more, I don't know, people are a lot more careful, I think. And people also realize, I mean, what was really common when I was a kid is that people would say there is no racism, right? Racism is just something, black people need to stop complaining. They can all vote now, so there's no such thing as racism. And, saying that there's racism is just something they invented to persecute white people or whatever. That's a common argument that I would hear. And no one talks that way anymore, right? People acknowledge that there is, racial disparities in a lot of different ways in terms of income, in terms of opportunity, but they didn't used to acknowledge that. It used to be that, that unless somebody was on the left, there would be straight up denial of there's equal opportunity for everybody, but black people just don't work as hard. I heard stuff like that all the time. There's no such thing as racism. There was racism 50 years ago, but not anymore. People don't talk that way anymore, and that's good. And so, I can criticize wokeism a lot, but it's good that things have, the way it was before was pretty bad too, and there was a lack of awareness, a lack of acknowledgement. So, and I remember, people used to just be blatantly racist and no one seemed to care, and not so much anymore. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot I could say, but anyway, it's late, folks, and I've got to get up in the morning. I've got an early morning tomorrow, so I am going to put on the closing music, and we'll be back.
New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.